Hello, and welcome to Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots.
My name is Erika, and I really like watching horror movies.
My name is Katy, and I really like overanalyzing things.
So, Katy, what are we overanalyzing today?
Today, we are overanalyzing 2019's Ready or Not, which was co-directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett.
Can I just open by saying how much I love this movie?
It's a really good one.
I love this movie, and it's so nice that it is a more recent horror film, because it's just nice to see that, like, we're still making good horror movies, you know?
And what I like about this one is that it's kind of light and funny enough that even people who aren't super into horror can still kind of like get into it.
Right, yeah.
It has some kind of bloody parts. I mean, really bloody parts, technically.
This is true.
But it's not like super gross. And it's not like super suspenseful scary. It's like, it walks the line between horror and fun comedy.
And comedy, yeah, which is
really well.
Yeah, something that, you know, Ready or Not, especially in a lot of other films that have come out more recently, like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Yeah.
And Megan, or Mathregan, depending on how you want to call it, are kind of categorized as horror comedies. And that's something that I've always found really interesting because it's, you know, basically the idea, it's pretty straightforward. A horror comedy is basically, it's a movie that has horror elements and comedy elements. But like, there are a lot of horror movies that have comedy elements, right? Like, you know, there's horror movies that make a lot of like dark jokes, sort of like gallows humor sort of thing, you know? And so I was thinking, and honestly, I don't really think that I've come to a satisfactory conclusion for myself
about what makes it a horror comedy versus just a horror that has some comedy in it.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And also, like, do we need to qualify a horror movie as being a horror comedy, right? Yeah. Especially when a horror movie is really good, you know? It's like our girl Sarah Marshall.
Yes.
Yeah, who's has some really great podcasts we listen to.
Yeah.
Has mentioned several times, and I couldn't agree with her more, that, you know, when a horror movie is just a good film, it, like, we try, or the powers that be, like, try to not categorize it as a horror film. So, for instance, like, I think the really big example for me is Silence of the Lambs.
Oh.
Horror film, right?
Yeah.
But because it was so critically acclaimed, it had, like, such fantastic acting, it was a great script, really great movie, it kind of, like, gets separated out from the horror genre. Just because it's good. They're
going to be like, it's, you know, a suspense, crime thing.
Thriller, yeah. And I was like, it's a horror movie. And that's okay. Like, you know, I mean, there's like really good, smart comedies and, you know, stupid, not smart comedies. But like, all of those films can still be like put under the umbrella of comedy. So like, I think I've been thinking about it and I don't really like differentiating between different kinds of horror as like horror comedy, horror, you know, it's just like, can we just call it a horror
Where
movie?
are the horror romances?
Warm Bodies, I believe, would be considered a horror romance, which I've actually never seen because and
it's not very horror. I don't know. I guess it's more like...
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never seen it.
I just feel like it's more, I mean, supernatural romance, I guess, which is a big genre. Supernatural romance is a big genre, but that's when you get into like sexy vampires and stuff.
Right. But then with Warm Bodies, isn't it zombies, right? So zombies are kind of a horror trope, right? And so like, just because there's zombies, does it make it a horror movie? Or
well, I mean,
something else with it?
I'm also thinking of like The Shape of Water.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's technically a monster movie.
It is, yeah.
But it's a romance movie, too.
Yeah. And it's not particularly...
It's not like scary.
Frightening, no.
It's maybe thrilling or suspenseful in part, but mostly because you're worried about the monster.
So, I mean, all of this opening is just to say that, like, you know, can't we just let horror movies be horror movies? Like, why do we need to delineate, you know, between, like, what kind of horror movie it is? And it's just like, can we just let horror movies be horror movies? Because, like, you know, Scream has a lot of really great jokes, you know?
Yeah. But people don't tend to call that a horror comedy. They call it a meta horror.
They call it a meta horror. They call it a neo slasher.
Yeah,
right.
I feel like most of the movies we've discussed so far have had pretty big comedy elements, except for like The Witch, maybe.
Right, The Witch is pretty
like,
serious.
Cabin Fever tries to be funny.
Yes.
I'm not saying it succeeds always.
Cabin in the Woods is supposed to be funny.
Yeah, which is another kind of like meta horror.
Scream has some good jokes in it. Evil Dead has some good jokes in it.
Yeah, walking that line.
Yeah. So And I do want to talk about the things in Ready or Not that I did find really funny.
There is a lot.
There's some good stuff in here.
What's her name? Samara Weaving is our main actress.
She's our main actress. She plays the character Grace.
A very good comedic actor.
She's a very good comedic actor and a very good horror actor. Her screams are
people talk about her
notch.
screams, about how they're like guttural.
They're good.
And like,
yeah. There's like, it's almost like a yodel kind of aspect to it. And she gets so many good screams in this film.
She does.
And it's just like, even like, it's true, you know, in doing my research after watching the film, a lot of people were like, wow, her screams are so good, you know?
Yeah.
And I noticed that too as I was watching it and taking notes. Every time she screamed, I would just like jot down like, great scream.
Good job, girl. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep it up.
So Samara Weaving's our main actress. And then we've also got one other actor, Mark O'Brien, who plays Alex, who's our kind of like main male character, I would say.
Yeah.
Adam Brody, obviously.
Because who doesn't know Adam Brody?
Honestly, it's so weird. I never watched the show, but like to me, he's the guy from the OC.
Yeah.
Even though I
never watched it
the
either,
OC.
but I saw his face on a lot of magazines, and I was like, if I did watch the OC, that'd be my guy. And then he was great in the Gilmore Girls.
Oh, okay. Never watched that, but I believe
he was a singer and played guitar.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, very attractive.
And of course, Alex's mom is played by Andie MacDowell, who's, I mean, just a really amazing actress. So we've got a really, really good cast and like really great characters, which, you know, we were talking off mic about like what a beautiful breath of fresh air these amazingly developed characters are in comparison to the characters in The Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Let's just start with the patriarchs of the movie, which are Tony and Becky, right? So Tony is how do we say their last name? La Domas?
La Domas.
Do we say the
La
S?
Domas.
Because like to me it's so French, like it's supposed to be La Doma, you know?
Yeah, but at this point they're so Americanized that I think they're La Domas.
Yeah. And then his wife, Becky, short for Rebecca, I
married
imagine.
into the Le Domas family.
Le Domas family. So they're kind of our main people in charge, right? This is obviously like a multi-generational empire. I think the Alex mentions they prefer the term dominion.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, as a joke, funny comedy. Yeah.
But is it a joke?
But is it a joke, right? So they're kind of, it seems to us in this film like the ones at the head of this empire.
Yeah. And Becky is interesting for being a character who married in.
Yes.
But is very bought into everything that the family is doing.
Yeah, and something that I noticed about the characters who marry into the La Domas family is like, what is their wealth level before marrying in? So we know Charity...
She came
Adam
from
Brody's
some sort of
wife,
bad background.
Something bad, right? Probably didn't come from a lot of wealth, right? We know Grace doesn't come from a lot of wealth.
Yeah.
But we don't really know about Becky. Like to me, is there anything in the film that's like tells us her wealth level before marrying into the La Domas family?
There are two things I can think of, sort of.
Okay.
One is that she makes a connection between herself and Grace and sort of sees Grace as like the future her, which says to me that maybe she comes from a similar background as Grace.
Okay.
And the other one, which isn't necessarily a point to class, is just that she has a Southern accent that gets stronger throughout the movie as she gets more frazzled. And
Oh, I never noticed that.
I think it's something that she suppresses because I think that's a part of her background that she's trying to kind of hide, which says to me that she's not as proud of her background compared to her new wealthy.
Right. But also, like, just because she might be from the South doesn't mean she doesn't have crazy money.
Right. No, a lot of people. No, but it's more the fact that she seems to try to, like, suppress her accent a little bit more.
Yeah.
Though also maybe it just naturally has gone away, but still comes back when she's stressed.
Comes back when you're
so,
frazzled.
Yeah, that's not as substantial of a point. I think it's more her relationship to Grace.
Right. I think to me, like.
But doesn't her. She has that gold cigarette case.
Yeah.
Does she say that she got that from her mother?
Ooh, I don't remember. But she does. She does have that fancy cigarette case, which Grace gets at the end of the film.
Yeah, she does.
Right?
Because she's the new Becky.
Because she's the new Becky. Yeah, who will hopefully do better than Becky did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that, and that at least the vibe I got is that like Becky might not be from as much wealth as the La Domas family. That doesn't mean she's not from money.
That's honestly kind of the vibe I got for Fitch as well, because he seems like somebody who probably is a bit of a like nepo business guy.
Fitch gives me born into money vibes for sure. Yeah,
like maybe not, billionaire money.
But money.
Yeah. Maybe not even millionaire money, but like money. Yeah. And honestly, even though Charity talks about having a bad background and not wanting to go back to it and wanting money.
She says she would rather die than go back. Yeah.
I'm still not sure if she was like necessarily as poor and alone as Grace was, just because people make a big deal of being like Grace does not belong and Grace really sticks out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Charity still had maybe some money, but her situation was bad for a different reason. They don't really get into it too much.
Right. And also, like, I'm sure whatever the character of Charity, like, whatever her experience was bad.
Yeah.
But, like, maybe, I mean, Charity also comes off as, like, pretty selfish and greedy.
Yeah.
Which is funny because her name's Charity.
Oh, I got notes on that.
We'll talk about the names for sure, yeah.
I got lots of notes on that.
And it's just like, was your life that bad, or did you just not have everything you could have ever wanted, and therefore the greed took over and was just like, I will do anything, you know, to have the life I think I deserve, right?
Right. And that is the interesting thing about all of the 3 characters who we know married into the family already, not counting Grace, who is marrying him now. Yeah. That they all do seem so dependent on this wealth that they're married into that, like, they're jumping onto this deal that they'd never had to make.
Right.
So, like, they even talk about how Charity, like, I think her husband Daniel has a line about how, like, you didn't even blink when I said that we had to deal with the devil.
Yeah.
Like,
and she was like, okay, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Where do I sign my name?
Yep. So should we talk about, if we're talking about Tony and Becky?
Yeah, I do want to talk more about them.
Let's talk. I just want to talk about, like, also their super weird uniformed maids.
Oh my god. Okay.
So I have their names. I was scared that they weren't going to get names, but they do. All 3 of them get names.
Clara,
Dora, Tina.
Oh, Tina.
And then their
Clara,
butler,
Dora, and
Stevens. We've got these 3 maids. They're all, like, dressed the same, super weird. And it's made very clear throughout the film that, like, Tony is weird to the maids.
Yeah. No, okay. There's the line where they all, like, multiple characters talk about how Clara was their favorite after she dies. They're like, aw, she was my favorite.
Yeah.
Which is, like, weird.
Also, like, what does it take for her to be your favorite?
Yeah. I'm
right?
Like, And then the last one who lives, I don't know if that's Dora or Tina or who.
I think that's Dora.
In the dumbwaiter.
Yes.
Who has her line about, I'm not even a maid. Mr. Ladomus just likes the way I dance.
Yes. What? And then, like, Tony mentions that sometimes. He's like, she was my favorite, right? You know, and it's just like, what are you doing with these maids,
I know, it's so uncomfy.
It's just it's so well done how, like, it's both text and subtext, like, the class structure happening in this film.
There's another great line that he has where he's actually talking to Grace, where he's getting mad at her because she's, you know, actually winning. Yeah. And he says, who the fuck do you think you are? Yeah. Our family's weathered worse than you. You're just another sacrifice. You're another goat. Yeah. Which is just so, that's how he sees the world.
And it's worth saying that this family does keep goats.
That they sacrifice,
yes.
Yeah, so all of the people who aren't their family are just like...
Or are not at their level of wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're just...
objects.
Yeah.
Or animals.
They're just goats. They're sacrifices. Yeah. They're expendable.
Yeah.
When one of the maid dies, who was it? One of them talks about, like... let's just try to find the one remaining maid, see if she can clean this mess up.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh my god!
Very good point. And also, honestly, there's also the butler Stevens, who I'm going to talk about later. It's just so interesting, his, like, loyalty to this family. Yeah. He seems like he knows what's going on and seems okay with it. Yeah. And he gets hurt by Grace. He gets burnt. He gets burnt on the face, right? And instead of tending to his burn, which can be a very serious injury, he starts to mop up some of the mess that has been caused by the family and by Grace until he stops because he realized Grace has escaped and is going to go get her with the car. Yeah. So, like, he is foregoing his own needs the entire film to serve the Ladomas family. Yeah.
And he seems potentially old enough in the way that these sort of families work with their servants to have been a servant in this household when the last time this happened.
Right.
So it's very possible this isn't even his first rodeo.
Yeah. Or, like, he knows the family, like, he's like Tony and Becky are, like, the ones in charge now, but, like, he remembers their parents and maybe even their parents before them. Yeah.
Like, he very possibly grew up in this house maybe alongside some of these
kids.
It's
it's like kind of that cult thing of, like, he genuinely does not know anything else.
Yeah.
Like, there is no other reality to him except the reality
and there is that thing that really rich people do where they treat their servants like they're part of the family to an extent where they'll be like, come along, have this dinner with us, do this thing with us, until suddenly they need something to happen right now. You know? And really they're being treated more like, you know, pets or like something. A pet.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because at least one of the maids too is, if not in on it, at least knows that they're looking for her and wants to help, because the reason that she gets shot is because she comes in saying, oh, I just saw Grace over there or whatever, and then Emily accidentally shoots her.
Oh, Emily.
And then the other maid who dies in the dumbwaiter is because she starts, when she finds out that they're just looking for Grace and not coming after all the maids, she's like, oh, okay, she's over here. Like, which I understand, she's trying to save herself.
Yeah.
So I understand that buy-in a little bit.
So should we just talk about how the maids die? Because I love it so much.
Okay, sure, yeah.
So this is, to me, absolutely part of the comedy part of this. Because Emily, she's the youngest, right?
I think so, yeah.
She's the youngest of the 3 kids.
Wasn't really present for the last time that this sacrifice thing
right,
happened.
exactly, yeah. Or maybe she was like an infant and she was sleeping or something, right, yeah. Talk about ineptitude. Like, she can't do anything, and it's not helpful that she is high the entire time. She's like, the first time we meet her, she's got cocaine on her nose. Still,
she's like sniffling.
We see her do cocaine. Fitch, her husband, makes a joke, or not a joke, but like says something like, let's see if we can get you an edible, level you out a little bit, you know? And it's like, oh my god, she's so high, you know. And they've given her this weapon of like a crossbow, right? What do they give her?
Oh, they originally give her a crossbow, and then they switch her out for a like a pepper box or something.
What's that?
It's like a little pistol. It's, I think, the pistol that was originally in the Clue board game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I never knew
box.
that's what it was called.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh.
Yeah. I know things.
Learning new stuff every day. Love this for us.
I could be wrong about all that, but I think it was like a pepper box or something.
I believe you. Yeah, so she kills the first maid. She actually kills 2 of the 3 maids. And I just think I have very few notes for this film, but one note I have is like, have Emily kill all 3 maids, right? Because that 3rd maid, Dora or Tina, whichever one,
dies by accident.
Dies by accident, and it's honestly like kind of a weird accident, which it's hard for me to believe that's the injury she would sustain.
Like, I have more thoughts about that,
right,
but talking more from Grace's perspective. So we'll talk about that. We'll circle back.
I also don't have a dumbwaiter, so
I don't know.
Yeah.
I did see that when we get that shot of the gears turning and stuff.
Yes.
That's actually video of Big Ben.
Oh, wow.
That's what they used.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Just as a little, I just read that.
That's very cool.
Trivia or whatever.
Movie trivia, yeah.
Do.
So I would love it if Emily killed all 3 of the maids.
Technically.
Yes.
Technically. She didn't kill the second one either because she wounded her, and that maid started to die very slowly and very loudly, and Aunt Helene gets annoyed by it.
Helene gets annoyed, yes.
And gets out her axe and finishes the job.
Yes.
So
which I actually wrote down as one of the examples of comedy, right? Because she's injured and she's like making a bunch of noise, and Aunt Helene's trying to make a point.
She's making her big, epic, occult speech.
Yeah, and the maid is ruining it. Is ruining it, and so she takes her head off, right? But like the first one, Clara, with like the crossbow like right through the mouth, is just like, oh, that's fantastic, right? You know, and it's so interesting that, like, again, the ineptitude and like how her family deals with it, like they like comfort her even though she's just murdered someone, like, honey, it's okay, you know, give me the crossbow, you know, and like kind of like her, you know, the main point is to like make sure she doesn't feel bad about her ineptitude.
Well, it's just like hers is the most obvious ineptitude,
right?
And her the most obvious substance use.
Yes.
But then we also have semi-functioning alcoholic Daniel's
who's
clearly working through a lot of PTSD.
Yeah, for sure.
But then we also have just like the incompetence of everybody, because like they end up having to rely on their butler and on their maids to help them find, like, they don't do a lot of the searching themselves. They get the butler to do it.
Yeah.
They have to rely on like the familiarity with the house and like locking everything down, the fact that they have more numbers. They have to end up going to their technology that Aunt Helene's like, we shouldn't use because it's not okay.
Right, which is another really interesting theme for me in this film of like tradition versus modernity, right? It's like,
whether that's acceptable or
this
not.
long tradition of hunting people down with these antique weapons, a pepper box, whatever.
There's like a harpoon gun or something too.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, a crossbow, a bow and arrow, old antique guns, right?
Yeah.
Like the tradition of like, this is the way that we've always done it versus like, but we also have like a sprawling mansion with a security camera system, and like, can we use that to our advantage, right?
And they finally decide they can.
And
because they're fucking inept, all of them.
Yeah, they can't.
They like can't do it.
Yeah.
they just fail. And it's like, it's really obvious with Emily, but it's true for all of
them.
There's
more of them there, yeah.
Which just seems very like something rich people being bad at things because they just sort of were aged into it. Nepotism.
Right. Sort of
never actually had to earn the place.
I like the phrase born on third base.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's very that vibe.
When they think they hit a triple and it's just like, no, you were just there already.
Yeah.
And also Fitch is a pretty like inept guy. He's funny.
He does pull up a video to learn how to use it.
So I actually did write that down when I was like looking at those examples of just like absolute ineptitude, right? I was just like, that scene where Fitch goes into the bathroom and pulls up a YouTube video on getting to know your crossbow. And I was like, that's pretty inept. But I was like, or is that very smart?
Yeah.
Because like he's using his resources,
yeah.
right? He's just like, I've got this crossbow. I don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
But what I do have is a phone with access to the internet.
Because in comparison, we have this one moment where I'm pretty sure Charity has lined up a shot with that, like, I don't think it's a harpoon gun, but it's something like, it's
like a big old gun.
It's just a big old gun.
Yeah.
That, like, has a certain thing to it where it seems like when you see her in the scopes, it seems like she has a perfect shot on Grace.
Yeah.
But it totally goes wide because she doesn't know how to use that weapon.
Right. Because that weapon is
super old.
Is old and maybe if they were maybe they should have upgraded their weaponry.
Becky later misses somebody too with her bow and arrow because she's like, oh, I haven't used this since the last sacrifice.
Right, yeah.
Which she's like, so she knew how to use it once, but she's out of practice. There is the theory that she is the one who shot Charles in the first scene because it's bow
we
and
don't
arrow.
See that.
Yeah, but we see he gets hit by arrows and then she has the bow and arrow later.
She does have.
So it might have been her, which means she's been bought into this for a while.
Right, for sure. We've just got this really interesting, like, play on, like, class, right?
Yeah.
It's just, like, it's entrenched everywhere in this film, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of, like, us versus them mentality. Mm-hmm. Yeah, several times people make comments either to or about Grace, so, like, she doesn't belong here, she's not one of us, right? And Daniel says... Because she has a soul. Interesting choice of words.
Because there's a quote from the co-director, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin.
Okay.
There's his name.
Yep.
He says, one of the big questions we are hoping the movie is asking is if extreme wealth is in and of itself a deal with the devil.
Oh.
Is there something intrinsically wrong with it?
Intrinsically corrupting.
Yeah. For us, the fun of the movie was balancing all of the big set PC things with getting to comment on wealth inequality in the country and privilege and abuse. Wealth in the country and privilege and abuse of power.
Yeah. Totally.
So, like, that was something that they were very consciously, obviously, when you watch it. It's a very conscious choice.
Yeah, it works out really well, too.
Yeah. It's one of a few movies that have come out recently about, eat the rich.
Absolutely.
It's a very big theme right now. Don't know why.
I couldn't imagine why. So we've got this eat the rich theme for sure.
Yeah.
But then we also, like, class is a huge aspect of this, but, like, I think we obviously need to talk about how, like, gender is a really big aspect of this film as well, especially when it comes to, like, marriage. And family, right?
Yeah, speak more. Say more on that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just love that we don't see any of the wedding.
Yeah.
Right?
We see the pictures that we see before the wedding.
We see after. We see, like, the aftermath of a wedding, right? But, like, we don't see the actual wedding, which I think is a really interesting choice because it's, like, we've all seen a wedding.
Yeah.
And also, honestly, this seems like such a, like, straightforward, traditional kind of wedding that it would be very boring.
Yeah, we can fill in.
We can fill in the gaps.
They probably didn't even write their own vows.
No, they probably just used the whatever ones,
Actually, no, wait, I forgot. Isn't she... No, I was going to say she's practicing her vows at the beginning. Isn't that what we get of her? But I'm not sure if those are actually her vows because then she starts to make jokes about... your brother who always hits on me and, like...
And your family is richer than God.
Yeah. I don't think that's actually in her vows.
But it's interesting because, like, having been involved in several weddings, like, usually the bride is not with her husband right before they get married. She's, like, with her bridal party, like, getting ready and, like, whatever,
But, of course, she doesn't have a bridal party.
No, she doesn't. She's got no one. She's got, like, we understand that she grows up in the foster system. Yeah. But, like... No, but
she doesn't even have her sister-in-law because Emily shows up late and apparently has not met her before. Because when Emily shows up, she's like, "We're gonna be best friends." They've just met. And then, I mean, she could technically have Charity in her party.
No.
But based on Charity's outfit, I don't think she did.
No. Yeah, and like so she doesn't have any family, but like
where's her friends?
She doesn't also have friends.
Yeah, where are her fucking friends?
She just seems like a really lonely person.
Yeah.
Like sets her up as like a very nice, loving person who just doesn't really have a lot of people in her life.
Yeah,
and, like,
I mean,
wants that family and structure like that.
Because she even talks about how her foster parents, like some that she had, that like they were good, they were nice people, they were just busy.
They did their best,
They were just busy and stuff.
Yeah.
That like she doesn't have any connections. I mean, maybe some people were at the wedding who were. It's also possible that it was a destination wedding, and that any friends that they had from wherever they're from could not afford to come.
Right, because they do insist on having it on the La Domas estate.
Yeah.
Which we don't know where that is, right? Maybe. That's just really interesting. And, she talks several times about wanting to have a family, and, and then the people in the movie saying, like, she doesn't belong here, she's not one of us, either for better or for worse, because, Adam Brody says, Daniel, I just want to call him Adam Brody.
Because he's Adam Brody. But yeah, it's like not about the money. It's about how she has a soul and is like a good person.
It's also really interesting that like, because, we think about, the marriage and the union of two people, like creating their own family unit amongst themselves, but also joining each other's family units. But Grace doesn't have a family unit, right? So her trying to join Alex's family unit, the family is not going to accept her as a member of the family until after they play the game. Like that is, they even say it more important than the wedding. Than the ceremony. Like we have to play a game, right? And so it's really interesting that they play the game, and it's it's hide and seek, and it's a kill or be killed situation.
It's a fucking bloodbath.
And so like she never gets to be a member of the La Domas family because they lose the game. Right? And so even if like she lost the game, then she would die and not be a member of the La Domas family either. So like there's really just no winning for her. Like she wants a family, and she's never gonna get it, right? So you're absolutely right about what did you say?
Anti-marriage propaganda.
Anti-marriage propaganda, 1,000%. So,
which I support in a movie.
I do too. And so I had some thoughts about that, right? And I see that story really being told through the like degradation of Grace's wedding dress over the course of the film.
It's such a good like visual.
First of all, it's a gorgeous dress. You got some nice lace, right? And it's really interesting because the first time she rips it, when she's hiding before she understands what the stakes are. She's like, okay, whatever, I'll hide in the dump later. And she like rips her dress, and she's like, shit.
Grace.
Oh, Grace. And then once shit starts to get real, right? And they're and Alex is the one who tells her what's going on.
Yeah.
He does wait until the absolute last minute.
Alex, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
We're gonna shit talk Alex in a little bit here.
What a piece of trash Alex is. Yeah.
Because he brings her Converse though.
Yes,
which
he
is
gets her more comfortable
that
shoes.
is a sweet thing that he does.
Yes,
I will give him that.
Yes, and then like it is once she understands the full stakes that she like rips the whole skirt off of her dress, right?
Yeah,
and that made me think is like, would women still get married if they knew the stakes, right? Like if their survival did not depend on it, right? Because the idea of marriage over centuries is overwhelmingly been a business deal, right? And like the way that women kind of needed to get married because they literally could not support themselves without
they had no other options.
They had no other options.
Especially if they had no family.
Yes. So like they got to get married, right? They got to become a wife and then probably a mother, right? Regardless of what they want for themselves, it's just a matter of their survival, right?
Yeah.
They don't have access to the same resources that a man does. They need to connect themselves with a man to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
And also, a third of the women in this country who are murdered by their male intimate partners.
Yep.
Right? So it's like, again, would you get married if you really knew the stakes, right? And if you didn't have to,
right?
Would
Yeah.
you? And then once she's in that like weird cellar pit with the goats,
the goat,
and she gets the thing through her hand, again accompanied by an amazing scream. She like rips off the sleeve and dresses her wound with it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just really interesting that she is in her dress the entire time. It starts to devolve. It's ripping, and
her hair starts to become a mess too. She has all of those pretty over the top braids,
that are starting to
the fancy brides always get in their hair.
Yeah, and then And then the shoes, of course. I actually don't know what kind of shoes she starts with. I imagine they're heels.
They're heels, yeah.
And then and that's one way that
I
Alex...
mostly just remember the sound of them clicking down the hallway, because her dress is longer at that point, so we don't really get a good view of them. But you can hear her clicking down the hall heels, to the dumbwaiter in that first...
And then once she understands the stakes, Alex does get her a much more comfortable and easier to move in pair of shoes, which is nice.
Yeah. We'll give you that one, Alex.
I'll actually give him a couple of things. However, it's just the, like, do we want to talk about how trash Alex is now, or
should we just go right into it?
Let's go into it, because I do want to say that he does help her, but again, it is like only through the lens of like his ownership and control of her.
Yes.
Right. So,
no, I have it kind of beat by beat in order. Yeah. So the first thing we get is actually the first person to try to tell her not to do this is Daniel.
Yes.
Daniel says, you don't belong in this family.
Yes. Because you have a soul.
Yeah.
Not because you're not good enough for us, it's because you're too good for us. Yeah.
Yeah. And he seems to be the only person in the family that does have any sort of relationship with Grace, other than Alex, of course.
Of course.
Because she like specifically references how he like hits on her and stuff.
Yeah. And
okay, Daniel.
And his drinking problem.
Yeah. But and then it's after that Alex is like, no, but he's right. You really don't have to do this. But neither of them are ever like, because you're in danger, girl.
That's right.
It's like I really thought of in Cabin in the Woods, where they like they have them make the choice. It has to be their choice. You know, to choose.
It's all about free will.
But it's like, is it a real choice when you don't have any of the facts?
Right.
Like they're all being kept from you. That's not a choice.
That's not a choice. Or again,
that's like coercion.
A coercion. Or if no isn't an option, then yes means nothing.
Yeah.
Totally.
So it's very that vibes.
Yeah.
With this piece of shit. No. And then when it does come to the game, he says it's just a weird family ritual and we only have to do it once, without telling her anything about what the family ritual is. And also, he's fucking lying. They aren't going to have to only do it once. What if they have children? Right. What if anybody else in the family gets married? Like, her own children might get married, and she's going to be complicit in this.
Yeah.
If she doesn't, end up dying herself or killing the entire family, which she does. But, like, what? Is she just going to, without any knowledge, suddenly be stuck in this family where, like, one day her son or daughter or whoever is, like, going to maybe have to kill their spouse?
Right.
And she's just supposed to go abort. Like, she has no idea what she's getting into.
Exactly.
And it's like supposedly because he has this thought that he's going to just somehow keep her out of it forever.
Yeah.
And that's like not possible, dude.
It does make me wonder, like, what Alex truly believes about his family's, like, myths,
Because he's the one we hear who actually saw Mr. LaBelle when he was a child.
Right. They say it's like, oh, he saw it. And they were just like, well, he was 5. He doesn't know what he saw.
Yeah. And then he also has stories about how, like, other family members who eloped to try to avoid it. And then they died.
Yeah.
So, like, he seems to believe it.
Right. Or I wonder if it's, like, the going back home because, the characters also make a lot of comments about, like, thank you for bringing Alex back to us. Like, Alex was gone for a while.
Yeah.
So, like, I wonder if maybe the separation from the estate kind of, like, maybe
he started to, like, think, like, that was all bullshit.
And then once he comes back, he was like, oh... maybe this is my life, though.
Yeah. It's a very clear contrast to, I think him and Daniel are such good foils for each other.
Yeah.
Because Daniel clearly has so much PTSD about the last time that they had to do this.
Right, which is our opening scene.
Yeah. Which is fair, because Alex was, like, in a little armoire or whatever. Yeah, and, like, didn't really see it, whereas Daniel played a very pivotal part.
Yeah.
And, like, actively chose to not save this guy. Instead was like, he's over here.
Yeah.
But, like, this whole night, we can see that he is drinking a lot. Yeah. He can't look at the masks when the kids come in. He's, like, looking really frazzled, and just, like, upset the whole time.
Yeah.
And where it seems like he's very aware of what is probably going to... Like, he seems almost convinced that they're going to play hide and seek.
He already knows.
Yeah, it's like he already knows.
Yeah.
Same with Aunt Helene. She seems to know, too. I think because she can see a lot of herself in Alex. That she also seems to have this, like, preternatural sense that...
Man, Aunt Helene is such an interesting character.
Yeah.
Also, so intense.
But I just think it's interesting in comparison to Daniel, how Daniel is so resigned to it and Alex is so in denial.
Right. Yeah, there is a lot of, like, conflict around killing Grace. Right?
Yeah.
Like... because I think they do kind of have maybe some doubts about their family superstitions, or like
they're
maybe
a little more separated from it for being the younger generation.
Yeah, they're more separated from it, or, maybe they're just like, this is too much and like this needs to stop.
Yeah, because
right?
Alex has that thing about the reason he left is because all of the goat sacrifices were starting to feel normal.
Yeah.
And goat sacrifices should not feel normal to a young man. But what really gets me about Alex and how he's a piece of shit, if we're ready to really get into Alex,
let's do it,
is the fact that he doesn't tell her. And the reason he gives is that if I told you, you would have left.
And I cannot imagine my life without you.
Like, he was more scared of her rejecting him
than
of her potentially being murdered by his family.
Which, again, is just like, oh my gosh, like the entitlement to her and her body.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, well, you would have left and I couldn't have that.
Yeah,
right?
no.
So he tells her, but he tells her, or he keeps it from her until he cannot keep it a secret anymore, right? When one of the maids is dead.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, okay, so some stuff's going down. Let me explain.
Yeah, and it's clear that they're trying to kill Grace.
Yeah. But he does get her better shoes.
Yeah.
And he does actively work with her to try and get her out of the house, right?
He does.
He tells her about the servant corridors, right?
Which is another good class wealth thing about how she's using the servants' quarters to get out. That's pretty good. And like the kitchen and stuff.
And that the other family members are less familiar with those corridors because they're the servant corridors.
Yeah, what are they going to do in those servants' corridors? Yeah, like it doesn't seem like Charity knows that there's a servant corridor for Alex to sneak out of.
Yes. And he's like trying to get her out of the house. He's trying to help her, but like again, it's through the lens of like, but she's mine and I control her.
Yeah. Like, I am going to save my wife.
Yeah, my wife.
No, and then there's this part where it's like, Alex says to his mom, like, I would choose Grace over any of you all, you bitches. Like, come on.
Yes.
And his mom, Becky, is just like, bitch, you've known this girl for a year and a half.
Right.
No.
And you've basically just been, like, having sex for 18 months.
We've been brainwashing you for your entire life.
Right, exactly.
I think we know who you're going to choose.
And that is something else that's like, people are allowed to do whatever they want to do, especially if they haven't made a deal with the devil. But, like, you've known someone for 18 months and you're ready to get married, like, I don't know. Yeah, maybe meet the family first.
And his whole reason for proposing to her was that he knew that she would really want to get married and she would leave him if he didn't propose.
Right, yes.
And it's like, try communication.
Yeah, why don't you guys talk about it?
Maybe you can be a family without getting married.
Right.
Maybe you can be honest about the fact that you just never want to get married, and that's fine. And if that doesn't work for your relationship, then that doesn't work for your relationship, and you break up.
Yes.
Motherfucker.
Seriously. I found this really fantastic article on Polygon.com.
Yeah.
Written by, the author's name is Emily Heller.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the gender of this person, Emily. Makes me think female, but whatever. But they go like to town on Alex and like said it better than I could have, if I may give a quote.
Yes, please do.
So because, Alex is proving to be helping Grace, so the family like incapacitates him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he arrives at the dining room to see his wife covered in blood after Grace has just murdered his mom, right?
This is such an important part for the relationship.
And Alex can tell that, Grace's feelings for him have fundamentally changed, right? That
you won't be with me after this, will you?
Yes,
he says.
Yes.
Because that's all that matters to him.
So, and then this is a really great quote. It says, "This is where Alex's romantic hero facade falls away, revealing him to be just as selfish, entitled, and cruel as the rest of his family. He goes to hold Grace tenderly at first, but then forcefully, calling out, 'She's in here,' right?
Yes.
It's a gutting scene, especially considering how it calls back to the movie's opening, in which young Alex hides in the closet while his older brother Daniel routs out the last poor guy who pulled the hide and seek card, right?
He's in here.
And the author goes on to say, like, he loves Grace, but to him that means ownership and control.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So once he realizes that she no longer belongs to him and is no longer controlled by him, he's done. Mm-hmm. He starts to discard her and actually becomes a more active participant in the ritual.
Yeah. He's like full on bought in at that point.
It's sort of like, it's just that like textbook abuse dynamic. If I can't have you, no one else can. Right.
And what I love about Grace is that she starts to pick up on that in these really subtle ways. Mm-hmm. Like when she's in the car, even before Alex turns on her, she has that dream of Alex in the ritual mask.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like her subconscious is telling her, actually, you can't trust him.
No.
And there's a way right in the scene you were just talking about, right after she kills his mom.
Yeah.
Where the first thing she does is back away from him and look freaked out and scared of him.
Yeah.
Even though he's sort of still coming at her as somebody who loves her, you know?
Right.
She knows that that's not.
And then he does, like,
And she's
physically
right.
assault her.
She's right.
Yeah. He, like, grabs her, you know, and, like, kind of, it's like,
Yeah.
kind of by the neck, like, kind of
Yeah.
choking her a little bit, but, like, trying to keep her
No,
still,
she-
like, she's in here, you know?
She ends up being a really good judge of character because at the same time, again, comparing him to Daniel because they're just perfect foils.
Right.
Love brothers that are foils.
Yes. Yeah.
She, for some reason, like, kind of just trusts him immediately, and she's right to. Like,
To trust Daniel.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Daniel also does a lot of stuff to help her out.
Yeah.
He sees her in the kitchen and he, like, gives her a head start.
Yeah,
you know?
he's like, I can give you 10 seconds.
Yeah, he's the one who like poisons the family's drinks to slow them down a little bit so she can get out. you
Right,
know?
yeah. And he has the thing about, like, I always knew at some point someone had to burn it all down. I just didn't think it would be me. And it isn't. It's Grace, but because he helps her.
Yes, but and also he dies for Grace.
He really does.
He does.
He stands in front of her and, like, protects her.
Yeah, because Charity, I think it's Charity who's got the
Yeah,
gun,
yeah,
right?
Charity
and,
shoots him.
and she's just like, and he's like in the way. He's like, no, I can't let this happen. You're gonna have to shoot me first, and she does.
Yeah.
And so, like, also a lot of really interesting stuff about Daniel and Charity's relationship.
I know.
Right? They're like so obviously not in love with each other.
Yeah.
They don't have any children, at least not that we ever
No.
see. So it's like, what are you guys still doing together? Like, could you
I know,
get
and
a
it's like,
divorce?
I don't know if with the devil deal, if you can leave the family ever.
Yeah.
Like, is divorce not an option?
yeah.
Or was he fully aware that whoever he married was going to be stuck in this bullshit family, and so, like, he didn't ever get attached to the person he knew he was going to get married? Like, was it more of a business transaction,
Right.
a political move? Was
Yeah.
she important, her family important in some other way, you know, that made the marriage make sense in that way, and, like, he never wanted to love her?
Right.
Because he was already just so fucked up.
I know. Yeah, he's just got a lot of tough.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he has no faith in himself, even though Grace does. Over and over again, she's like, I knew you would save me. This isn't who you are. There's one part where she's like pleading with him, and she's like, Alex loves you. He won't forgive you if you do this. And he's like, maybe not, but at least he'll be alive. And he says, I'm not who you think I am. Alex is the one who got out. If anyone was going to save you, it would have been him. But he's totally wrong.
He's wrong. Yeah.
And Grace is right. Daniel is who she thinks he is.
Yeah.
He is the one who saves her.
Yes.
I mean, Alex does stuff at the beginning too, but when it comes down to it, he's
yeah.
not there for her. Whereas Daniel's like, yeah, let's burn this motherfucker down.
Yeah, I'll die. It's fine. You know. Yeah.
I mean, Daniel and Alex's relationship is interesting too.
Yeah, well, especially because it's the first relationship we see at
Yeah.
the beginning of the film, right? And
Yeah.
and Daniel does kind of play like an older brother protective role.
Yeah, we have
for
that
Alex.
implied later too, that Daniel is always protecting Alex.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's the oldest son, you
Yeah,
know, so
it's
that
like
I think
his job.
that comes with a really specific
And
set
it's
of
also a
responsibilities.
very specific set of responsibilities, or is an interesting dynamic
Mm-hmm.
because also they seem to be thinking of Alex as like the next patriarch of the family, even though Daniel's older.
Even though Daniel's older.
Because
yeah.
Becky's very much talking to Grace as like, you're going to be the new
Yeah,
me. Alex, the one who we need to get back into the family.
Yeah,
We don't
thank
really
you for
care.
bringing him back.
We don't
Yeah.
care that Daniel's an alcoholic and that Emily's, you know, on coke all the time.
Yeah.
Like, we just need Alex. He's the future of the family,
Yeah.
even though he's like the second son, which is an interesting dynamic. I don't know. Daniel and Alex have a lot going on. That's interesting.
I wonder if, like, especially with such a traumatic experience that Daniel had at such a young age, right? Like that maybe even just right after that and for the rest of his life was just like obviously a mess, right?
Yeah.
And like had PTSD, probably some depression, right?
Yeah.
You know, and like this doesn't seem like a kind of family that's going to help him through
No, God,
that.
no.
They're going to be like, here's some whiskey, self-medicate. Like,
Yeah.
buck up, you know?
You got this.
Buck up, buttercup.
No,
Yeah.
there's that great scene that I'm now thinking about, more sibling stuff, between him and Emily, where
Who and Emily? I'm sorry.
Daniel.
Okay,
Sorry,
Daniel.
Still
and Emily.
Daniel.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Where he tells her, we all deserve to die.
Yes.
He's like, we all deserve to die.
Yeah.
And Emily says, my kids don't. But like, who are those kids being raised to be? Like, I think Daniel very much sees himself in Georgie, who's the one who like shoots Grace through the hand.
Yes, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's like, when he sees all that, that's kind of the moment when Daniel's like, that's who the kids are that we are saving. This is the family that we're like
Yeah.
perpetuating into the future.
Yeah.
the kids don't actually deserve to live. They do deserve to die,
and
even though they're children.
Die.
And they do die.
But they die off screen, which I'm like, okay, I can handle this compromise. Okay. Yeah. Also, I'm wondering, because I was just noticing, I've seen this movie like 3 or 4 times now, this like kind of redemption arc for Daniel.
Yes.
Like he's in like, immediately he does something that we would consider very bad, right? Mm-hmm. And like he's, in a rough place, obviously.
Yeah. The first thing
mentally unwell.
First thing we hear about him as an adult is that he's a drunk who hits on his brother's fiance.
Yeah.
Not great.
Not good optics. No. And then like over the course of the film is like trying to make it better. Like I feel like he's trying to redeem himself.
Even if at the beginning the most that he can do is just not act, that's still more than anybody else in his family is doing.
Yeah. I wonder, so my question I wanted to ask you is like, do you think that over the course of this film, Daniel redeems himself?
I think there is one complication to that question,
okay.
which is that
fair.
I am biased towards Adam Brody's face.
In positively or negatively?
Okay. Very positively. Okay. I like his face.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
He got a good face, which is why he was chosen for Promising Young Women, is because they chose a lot of people who America thinks as like,
trustworthy,
sweet good boys.
Yeah.
And like, that's one of my sweet good boys.
Yeah.
So, from the beginning, I'm just sort of like, oh, poor Daniel. He's got so much PTSD. Take care of this boy. Like, I get very that way about him, which is stupid and dumb. Yeah. And I see myself for it. I see it. I don't know. Redemption is a funny thing because it's like...
That's fair. Yeah.
What does he need to be redeemed for? Are we talking just for getting that one guy killed in the beginning who was probably going to get caught anyway?
Right.
If they were relying on the children. Though, if they were as inept back then as they are now, maybe they didn't need the kids' help.
Yeah.
Is it because of all of his generational wealth?
Right.
That it seems like he's mostly drinking away? We don't know if he's involved in the family business much at all, or like how much he's involved in any of the goat sacrifices or anything.
Right.
Like, I don't know. And then he never does anything really actively against Grace. He does capture her at the end when she's like pleading with him, but then that's only a setup for him to then poison his family. So it's like, so I don't know. I think before I can say if he is redeemed in the end, it needs to establish like what he did to need redemption.
Right.
This whole family are pieces of shit.
Yeah.
And he is a part of it, so he's complicit in it. He's definitely complicit.
Right.
I just mean, I'm not saying he didn't do anything bad. I'm just saying you have to establish that to then establish what exactly needs to be done to be redeemed.
Right. What choices did he make that required redemption?
Yeah.
Right. And like a lot of what has happened to him has not been his choice.
Yeah.
The family he was born into,
yeah.
Right? The deal with the devil.
But even the choice to sort of go along with it all, even if just sort of resignedly, is still a choice.
Right.
He didn't leave like Alex did. He makes a point of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. And Grace would not have lived otherwise.
Right.
But she also wouldn't have
lived. Not for lack of trying.
No. And she also wouldn't have lived without Alex's help. But that doesn't redeem Alex because he ends up being a piece of shit.
Right, because his intent
yeah.
in offering help is not
I think there's something more redeemable about Daniel because he's the one character in the family who realizes that the family itself is the problem.
Right, and that the whole damn system is wrong.
Yeah. And then actually does. So he's more redeemable than anybody else in the family. But I don't know. It's redemption's a sticky thing.
I agree. Yeah.
Honestly, a very like kind of Christian thing to be redeemed.
Right. Well, they did make a deal with the devil.
Yeah. So that's true.
Obviously, we are in the sphere of Christianity in here somewhere.
Can we just spend a quick more second talking about how Alex is a piece of shit?
Yes.
Because the one thing we didn't talk about.
I've said everything I need to say.
No, there's just one thing we didn't touch on.
Yeah.
Which is after his family explodes. And
he
does yet another heel turn and is like, don't leave me, honey.
No, I'm saved. I didn't explode. It's because of you.
Yeah, she's like, I don't want to die. And she's like, well, neither did I, you fuck.
Yeah. And just the beautiful optics of taking off the ring, throwing it at him, boom, explosion.
Which raises the question.
So good.
If he had never turned on her. If he had tried to help her the whole time, would LaBelle have saved him?
Right. Which family does he belong to?
Right, yeah.
Right?
Did she, isn't even just the matter that since LaBelle is all about a gamble,
right.
He backed the right horse.
Yeah.
If he backed the right horse the whole time, would he have lived?
I don't know.
So it's interesting. But he doesn't do that because he sucks.
He sucks, yep.
Okay, totally that was the last thing I wanted to say about how much he sucks.
So...
Aunt Helene, though.
Aunt Helene, she's like crazy intense, right? Yeah. And so I was wondering as I was watching it, I was like, who is this character?
Yeah.
We know that like she is like, again, a victim of the hide and seek game,
Yes.
right? Her spouse, her husband dies. But like, she's just so intense about everything. And the way that the actress delivers her lines is just like so intense and over the top to me.
Yeah.
That I couldn't help but think like, is she a bad actor? And you know more about acting than me.
I got the sense that she was acting in the way that she was told to act.
That she was directed to.
That maybe you just disagreed with the directing choice on her.
And no shade to that actress. Like,
yeah.
I
think it was more of a directing choice than an acting choice because she seemed competent in what she was doing.
Yeah.
It just maybe wasn't what you wanted her to be doing.
Also, does she give you a lesbian vibe?
Because of the hair?
Because of the hair.
Because there was the only one man that she ever loved.
Exactly. She does say, she calls Charles the only man she ever loved. And in my brain is like, is that because you don't like men?
Have there been women that you love?
Right, yeah.
And how's the devil feel about gay marriage?
Exactly. And it's just like, is that because like he's the only dude you could ever like stand for
Yeah.
an extended period of time? Or like maybe her and Charles.
Was he also gay and it was a lavender marriage?
Was it like a beard situation and like
We love a lavender marriage.
yeah, I don't know. And so
I actually did not think about that, but I love it.
it's just interesting because she's like the only man I ever loved, and is like, is
Say
that
more
just
on that.
because you don't like men? And,
Yeah.
you know, because like it happens a lot, especially when people aren't allowed to like express their authentic sexuality. They like find someone of the appropriate gender,
Yeah.
and they'll be like, "You'll do," you know, like,
and then
I do have feelings for you. I love and care for you, but you know, I'm just wondering if it was maybe one of those
and
situations.
she's also interesting as being one of the people who's talked about, like Alex, who was maybe not as invested in the family and not as down with the whole devil deal stuff.
Yeah.
Which I'm now totally reading her as gay, with like the idea of her maybe being closeted lesbian and like the struggle with that against the family religion.
Right.
And like being your authentic self versus the tradition that exists.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. There's something there that I've never thought about it.
And she also just like, she hates everybody, right?
She
like,
does.
what does she call
We love
Emily?
a
Like
mean lesbian.
her brown-haired niece or something?
Yes, my brown-haired niece is still here or whatever.
Who continues to exist.
Yeah, continues to exist. That's it.
Damn, Aunt Helene.
Yeah, and I do think another interesting aspect of Aunt Helene is that even though she's the one who's really suffered because of this deal with the devil,
right,
she's in the future the one who is like the most invested in it.
Right, and the most dedicated to tradition.
Yeah, which is interesting that that's the way that she sort of dealt with her trauma.
Yeah.
Like she could have gone the more Daniel route of being just sort of resigned and like drinking himself to death.
Yeah.
Or the Alex route and like got the fuck out.
Yeah.
But then we have that mirrored in Alex. She's sort of one of our first signs that probably the way Alex is going to go is to really back his family and tradition.
Yeah.
Because that's what Aunt Helene ended up doing. And
that's true. Yeah.
They're sort of mirrored characters.
Yeah.
In terms of this. And
now, if only Alex's hair was as cool as Aunt Helene's
hair, then maybe Grace would have still loved him.
Okay.
But since we're talking about deals with devils, if we want to get into a literary corner, I do want to just sort of for a moment, just a little brief aside about like the history or the literary history, I should say, of deals with devils.
Yeah.
Because I think any story about this is at least to some extent drawing on the story of Faust.
Is Faust considered like the OG sell your soul to the devil?
No.
Okay.
But it definitely is the biggest one.
Popular.
I mean, he's a German folklore figure, really, I guess is the best way you could put it, from like the 16th century.
Wasn't Faust written by Goethe?
There have been so many versions of Faust written by many people, and Goethe is one of them.
Hey, how about I just stop talking and I let you tell me?
No, but you're right. Goethe is one of them. Not the first, but definitely one of them.
One of them, yeah.
Because, Goethe came later. But there was a real life person, like an alchemist and astrologer in Germany named Johann George Faust, except for it's not pronounced George because it's German. It's like however they pronounce it, Gorge. Yeah. Who like maybe was the influence for this Faust figure. And he's the one in the story who makes the deal with Mephistopheles is the one. I almost didn't know.
Now,
I always want to say Mr. Mistopheles because that's the character in Cats.
So I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Mephistopheles.
Mephistopheles.
Mephistopheles. Is that like a demon?
Yes.
Is this one of the, like, what are they called? Like the dukes or the knights of hell?
Yeah, there's like devil princes. There's like, princes of hell. There's like different levels. Mephisto, I think, might be related to Mephistopheles. I think they're the same, just different versions of the same name.
And Beelzebub.
Yeah,
like
all of those guys. Yeah, Baal,
like,
Belial, Asmodeus.
They're not,
or Asmodeus rather.
They're not names for Satan,
but they're like the other angels who fell with him.
The other angels who fall with him. They're demons. Yeah. They're kind of like they have high rank in the hell hierarchy.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Because hell is a very organized place.
It really is. Well, because, if we think about Lucifer being an angel falling, right? It's just like, it would make sense that it would be like heaven, but
an
flipped,
inverse,
right?
Inverse.
And I also take umbrage when people involve the literal devil, and it's like Satan himself. Like this idea of Satan, right? It's like he's got so much stuff going on. He doesn't care about one little family.
Yeah,
like
Satan's not gonna go hang out with Faust. Like, no.
Yeah, this is like those like department heads. Like that's their job.
Yeah,
like,
they'll take care of it.
Satan's the CEO. He's busy.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So most of these deals with the devil's things, it is gonna be like a Mephistopheles or somebody else like that, or even just sort of an unspecified devil, demon, whatever. And this story becomes really popular because it has so many retellings. I think the first one that sort of brought it to the English-speaking world was Kit Marlowe, who's a contemporary of Shakespeare, if you don't know. So he wrote a tragedy of Faust.
Kit Marlowe?
Christopher Marlowe.
I was going to say, you mean Christopher Marlowe?
People who are really tight with him call him Kit.
Oh, he's Kit. His friends call him Kit.
Yeah, his friends call him Kit.
Got it.
We call him Kit.
Cool.
We love Kit Marlowe.
Interesting. Shakespeare's going to come up in a minute here.
Good for us.
Yeah, so Christopher Marlowe, Kit, I'm familiar with him.
And then, as you said, there was the Goethe version, which makes some interesting changes. And then, like, Thomas Mann wrote one. Like, seriously, so many people, not to mention a bunch of symphonies. Like, Wagner has one about Faust. I think Liszt. Schumann maybe has one. I don't know. That's more your realm.
That is more my realm. There was, what was it? It was in German. And it was like, yes, I think it's called Der Freischütz, which translates, is not a direct translation in English, but like the best kind of translation is like the magic bullet or the magic arrow.
Yeah.
Where a guy does make a deal with Satan, and Satan's name is Samuel. And I remember watching, like, we watched like a recording of it, like a tele, broadcast of it. And like the actor or opera singer who like plays Satan, like, looks super creepy. Like they give him like a really like paper white face and like a big black cape. And I was like, yeah, that's creepy.
Yeah.
That looks like Satan to me. Yeah, that looks like Satan to me. Right. So we see it there in music as well.
Yeah. So no, and Faust, the reason I wanted to start with Faust is because I think he's the most prominent example. And I mean, there's a reason that they're not always called deals with devils. Sometimes they're called Faustian bargains.
Right. Yeah.
It's like the other name for them. But no, it is not the first example. I mean, in terms of making deals with devils, it sort of depends on our definition, because there are actually like folklore and like religious stories from like cultures that predate Christianity, and thus there is no actual devil to make deals with.
Right.
But there are like deals with like jinn and like demons, devas,
the fae,
things like that like can kind of count for it. But the earliest example I really saw
who are morally ambiguous at best.
Yeah. But in terms of like deals with devils, I think there is a legend from the 6th century where a cleric named Theophilus, that's my best guess, made a deal with Satan so that he could become a bishop in the church. He just wanted to really move up in the church. Which is such a weird thing to make a deal with Satan for. Yeah. I was like, I want a better position in the church, so I'm going to go to Satan. But his story is interesting because then he repents and the Virgin Mary saves his soul.
Aww.
Yeah. But then so that's like the early example I could find.
Right.
But also though, if you look into the actual Bible.
Yes.
There are deals with, like, what was Eve doing other than making a deal with the serpent, who is the devil, for knowledge?
Yeah.
Like, that's literally what Faust does.
Yeah.
And then she suffers the repercussions of that.
Right.
And then, like, he successfully tempts Judas with the 30 pieces of silver.
That's true.
Depending on which of the Gospels you're reading.
Yeah.
How much Satan is involved, I mean.
Yeah.
He tries to tempt Jesus,
he tries
but that
to
doesn't
get
go
Jesus,
well.
It doesn't work.
And then somebody else pointed out, somebody who actually knows about religion and stuff, and I don't, that God himself makes a deal with the devil in the Bible over Job.
Over Job,
Like
yes.
God himself
Yes.
is making deals with the devil.
Yes.
He's bargaining with the devil. So it's like such an old concept.
Right. And it's not always for like a soul.
Yeah.
Right.
In that case, they were just sort of fighting over Job and I guess his soul.
I guess, yeah.
But then, but there are other things that people make deals for. I was just sort of thinking of other popular examples since then. The one I'm most familiar with, of course, is Oscar Wilde's A Picture of Dorian Gray.
Is that directly related to like a demon or just some like witchcraft in general? Or?
It's a little more ambiguous, but he says that he would like basically give his soul for eternal youth if like only he could be as beautiful as this painting forever and the painting could grow ugly.
Right, yeah.
He like kind of says it out loud, you know?
Okay.
But he never has a big moment where like a devil comes to him and is like, I'm Mephistopheles, let me make a deal. He like, you know, so it's not like as big as that, but there are like some really clear Faust references throughout the novel. So it's like, it's there. But yeah, he's making a deal for youth. So there's that. Oh my God. Another one that I thought of is Ariel in The Little Mermaid.
Uh-huh.
Like, if you actually look at her scene with Ursula, the sea witch,
she literally signs
a contract. She signs her name in the devil's book.
Yeah.
The sea witch's book.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And exchanges her voice for the ability to walk on land, which is kind of interesting. And then the other famous examples are actually ones from real life that are kind of interesting.
Ooh.
Like Salem witches and other witches, which is more what Ursula is based on.
Right.
Because, I mean, we just saw that in the Vivitch.
The Vivitch, yeah.
Thomason writes her name in the book and sells her soul to the devil.
Well, she can't even write her name.
Oh yeah, she can.
She just does Oh no, but no, Black Phillip, like he
Helps
says, I'll
her.
guide thy
Yeah.
hand. Yes. Of course.
Oh devil.
Oh, you sneaky dog.
But then also, I mean, there are a few people that I didn't find very interesting to get into who are like political figures who maybe had some dealings with the occult, like John Dee or like
John D.
Cromwell.
Rockefeller?
No, like way back in the day, like Elizabethan court. He was one of Elizabeth's courtiers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, John Dee.
I
He
don't
was
know
like
who
an
John
occult
Dee
guy.
is.
He's an occult guy, and there's theories that he sold his soul to the devil.
Sure.
Oliver Cromwell maybe also sold his soul to the devil.
He canceled Christmas, so
he did something.
Yeah.
You know, but then in more like, I guess, more modern American stuff, or not even just American, Western.
Yeah.
A lot of musicians are said to have made deals with the devil.
Yes.
I mean, the big one is Robert Johnson.
Robert Johnson, yeah. I was
went
like,
down to the
who's that
crossroads.
guy's name who went to the crossroads?
Yeah, he went down to the crossroads.
Robert Johnson.
And then he died. Yeah. He's a member of the 27 Club. He died really young.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because the devil took his soul,
and
maybe.
it is really interesting because, like, is my understanding of that folklore is, like, he kind of disappeared for a while. Like, no one saw him for a while. And then all of a sudden he comes back and he's, like, crazy good at guitar. Yeah.
But then he's only good for, like, a year or some very small amount of time. And then he dies.
Right.
So it's like, oh, he made some sort of deal with the devil, obviously.
Obviously.
He sang about it in a song.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's also, like, Jimmy Page maybe made a deal with the devil.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't know about that one. But he was into occult shit. So.
No, man. They're just, like...
They're just weirdos. They're just nerds.
I mean, don't get me wrong, man. Like, I love Led Zeppelin, but, like, they're pretty clearly, like, lifting heavily, if not plagiarizing, like, the work of black musicians. Yeah. Like, you don't need to make a deal with the devil for that.
They're just like nerds and stuff too.
Yeah,
that of course
nerds,
they're just taking that sort of shit.
They're just reading Tolkien. It doesn't mean they sold their soul to the devil.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, there's like just sort of a history of musicians making deals with the devils. And I think there's a violinist named Pagliani or something.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting. And the interesting thing also about making deals with devils is that they pretty much always end badly.
Always, yeah.
There are a few exceptions of people who like kind of outsmart or outplay the devil. Right. If they're musicians. I think that comes up in the music ones too. Like I want to say Tenacious D does that. They have a song about
Pick
that.
Destiny. Right?
Yeah.
I actually never saw them.
And then there's the movie Crossroads with Steve Vai of all people in it. And the Karate Kid guy.
Okay.
The kid in the Karate Kid.
Okay.
Where that kid needs to have a guitar duel against Steve Vai, who is basically the devil. And he beats him in a guitar duel.
What's that song? Like Devil Went Down to Georgia?
Yeah, it's all over music, especially blues music.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun. So normally it goes badly, but sometimes the musicians and other people manage to outsmart or outplay them in like games of chance or whatever. Yeah. And then there's also some people who repent so fully that the deal gets broken for them. Like that cleric I was talking about. And also like Goethe's version of Faust that actually has a woman named Gretchen, prays for him. Actually, she dies. But then in heaven, she's like, but we could save his soul still.
Right.
And like goes out on a limb for him, even though he's awful.
What all of this is reminding me of is like, the show Supernatural.
I was going to say, because
right?
what you were saying about how it's never Satan himself.
Right.
It's often these other demons.
Yeah.
They're like Supernatural has those specific crossroad demons whose job it is to make deals for people's souls.
Yeah.
And if they break the deals, here come the hellhounds.
Yeah.
But what I like about this movie, to just bring it back to our film,
right,
is that this gives us instead of like all of these other stories about people who make deals, it's their story. It's the story of the person who makes the deal. Mm-hmm. This is the only story that I can really think of where the perspective is somebody off to the side who is like a victim of the person who made the deal.
Right. Grace.
Yeah. Like she didn't make the deal herself, but she still suffered from it.
Right.
Like, and that's common. Like Dorian Gray seduces Sybil Vane and then she kills herself, or what I was just saying about Faust. He seduces Gretchen and they have a bastard kid who's like, who dies and then she dies, like that's a common thing, is like some young poor woman or man who's like totally ruined by the person who made the deal. And in this story, we're actually getting that person's perspective, which is really cool.
The person who's closest to innocence.
Yeah, like the innocent bystander who's not really the one who's doing it. And so it's cool. And normally that person still gets fucked over, because they're showing how much this guy got corrupted because he seduced a woman and then she killed herself or whatever. And, this guy is her story. So it's cool to have Grace here to be like, actually, you know what? This is all bullshit and I'm not going to play along with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to die. The original script for this movie did end with her dying.
Yes, the original script does have them
which would be more typical of the genre.
Exactly. This is, I don't know, it just keeps coming back to Promising Young Woman. But like, this is what also makes me think about Promising Young Woman, because that movie, no spoiler, I guess, like, really made me believe that like those perpetrators of that crime were going to get away with it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I understand that is realistic.
Yeah.
But I'm watching a movie to escape reality.
Have a bit of catharsis.
Have some catharsis, and I want to see these pieces of shit brought to justice, and they do at the last minute, right? So like, I think that's kind of similar with this kind of movie. It's like, okay, in reality, yes, this person who is like of a lower social class than the family will like probably be taken advantage of, and in this case be sacrificed, right? Yeah. But I don't want to see that. I want to see...
We see that enough in our daily life, the workers at Amazon or whatever example you want to use from our real lives.
I want to see
her actually burn the place down.
The people who are in like every sense of the word have less power.
Yeah.
I want to see them like take their power and succeed.
So speaking on that, this was something I meant to say before, but I forgot to. Going back to Grace, who you said as like the closest to the innocent and being the one who like takes them down or whatever. What I find interesting about her in this movie is that she continues to be very reactive, and even burning down the house is an accident. Like, she never actually gets to have that moment other than when she kills the mom and is like, fuck your family.
Right. Well, yeah, especially because, Becky is like, she says something awful, like, you don't deserve a family.
Yeah. She says you don't deserve a family. Yeah. And Grace is like, fuck your family.
Fuck you, yeah.
Which,
so, I mean, she's been antagonized.
And that's like her only actual kill.
That's true, yeah.
Because there's the woman in the dumbwaiter. And then the butler, she tries to take the butler down with her wedding dress, which is great. But she just sort of knocks him out for a second. Yeah. And then he dies in the car crash.
Yeah.
Which she causes, but also... And then, when
she's not trying to. She's not trying to crash the car.
And I just feel like, because even the fire is kind of an accident. She just sort of knocks over one of the lanterns when she's sort of in the scuffle.
Right.
And I just feel like if any final girl, like, deserves to actually actively burn shit to the ground, like, if we actually saw her purposely lighting this shit to the ground, I would have been like, yeah, Grace, but get it. But they keep her, like, more innocent and reactive throughout the movie.
And also, I mean, I absolutely love the very last scene where, like, the house is starting to burn down.
And
she's covered in blood and guts. She's just looks a mess. And she just kind of, like, just sits down and, like, lights a cigarette.
Yeah.
And
like, her response for what happened, she's just like, in-laws.
It's the last word of the film.
Yeah.
In-laws.
So she's just an interesting character as a final. I mean, often final girls are kind of passive and reactive until they sort of take over at the end.
And virginal. She spends the entire movie in a white wedding dress, right?
Which she makes dirty and disgusting.
Of course, yeah.
Well, and the other thing I want to talk about, because we're talking about deals with devils, is, like you said, how it's often princes of hell and things like that, kings of hell.
Or like, kings or knights or dukes or I don't know. Yeah.
Labail,
yes,
as people have pointed out, you probably saw that, is an anagram for Belial.
Yes.
And then Ladomas is maybe an anagram for Asmodel, which is like Asmodai, Asmodeus.
Okay.
Asmodeus. I'm
Asmodeus,
not exactly sure how his name is pronounced. But Belial, who is Mr. LaBelle.
Yes.
He is in like Paradise Lost.
Oh.
He's one of the main angels that fall with Satan.
Oh, okay.
Which is, I think, very purposeful because I don't know if you caught this. The nanny, when she's reading a bedtime story to the kids.
She's reading Paradise Lost. I know. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
And
specifically.
like, what? Children?
Yeah. She's specifically reading one of Satan's lines where he says, "Here we may reign secure, and in my choice to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." Which is like the whole thesis of their family.
Right.
Yeah. And then then Asmodee or Asmodel or Asmodeus is a prince of hell who shows up in like all the Christian, Jewish, Islamic thought. Mm-hmm. And both Asmodel and Belial are named as demon kings in like there's the 17th century grimoire, the Lesser Key of Solomon. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
That rings a bell, but I couldn't.
Yeah, they just sort of list all of the devils and their different ranks, and so they're listed as demon kings.
You're totally right. I did see that, but did you also see? I looked up because the name LaBelle and La Domas give a French vibe.
Yeah, did you look at that? I did too.
I did look it up. Yeah.
What did you see?
LaBelle. It just means like in French usually means like the rent or the lease.
Yeah.
Right? Which makes sense. It's
interesting.
To me.
Yeah. Because if it's like, okay, there's one party getting temporary use of something such as material success and like wealth and stuff in exchange for consistent payment of, goat sacrifices.
And
the occasional human sacrifice. Yeah. And so it's perfect. Like whoever realized that LaBelle and Belial are anagrams and used them in this movie, whichever writer that was, genius.
Clever.
Genius stroke.
Yeah. And then La Domas is a conjunction of the Spanish verb domar, which means to tame or to control.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
So domas, so that would be like, to say domas would be like or you tame or you control.
Okay, cool.
It would be the informal second person.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know Spanish more than I do.
Yeah.
Because I was also looking at Les Domas as French. But there isn't a direct French. No. There's domain, which is like area or domain.
Right. Like
domicile. Mm-hmm. I assume it has a similar root. And then I started getting into Latin roots because there's the Latin domus, which means home, which then becomes dominus, which means Lord, and also gives us words for like lordship and ownership.
Also,
and like
that makes me think of dominion.
That's where I'm going with this.
Sorry, I did it again.
No, you're absolutely right. I love when you know where I'm going. Because
dominion.
You have on the one hand, you have this idea of like domus, home, family, which is very much what they are.
Yes.
And then on the other hand, rulership, control, dominion.
Dominion, yes.
And so then it's like, is this because the Les Domases have been given dominion over the world through their economic success?
Right.
Or is it because the Lord Satan has chosen them as his domain, as his area that he rules over?
Yeah.
And I particularly love the patriarch of the original guy, Victor Les Domas, which is such a great name because victory, winner and stuff. Yeah. But like there's a way with Les Domas, meaning like home or whatever, that you could translate that to the house always wins. Victor Les Domas, right? That might be a stretch, but I really like it.
I love it because, so I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet, but like literally, so I don't remember which happens first, but one of the very first scenes is that flashback to the last guy who died playing hide and seek, right?
Yeah.
And then we kind of get like the establishing shot as the credits roll, and the very first thing they show us is literally a cartoon devil.
Yes,
surrounded
the board game.
Surrounded by cards, dice, a roulette wheel, like playing chips. And it's like, it's literally telling us everything that's happening in this film. It's just like, hey, they sold their soul to the devil for a fortune in games.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, because their first big game was LaBelle's Gambit.
Yes. And they also have a game literally called Family Ritual.
No, I even actually paused it to look at the other game names.
What else was there?
First off, LaBelle's Gambit has a tagline that's take a risk, gain the advantage.
Yes, which is so interesting because it's a risk. So just because you take the risk doesn't mean you will gain the advantage.
Yeah.
It's a risk.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, that was
interesting.
That was fascinating.
Yeah, because it's a gambit. You don't know if it's going to... And the house always wins.
House
Victor Les Domas.
Yes.
Just saying. No, so there's Family Ritual.
Yeah.
There's Sunrise. Because that's when they need to kill her by.
That's what they need to kill her
There's
by.
one that's called Abracadabra, which I don't know about.
It's just like
occult
magic-y
stuff.
things.
There's one that's Secret Counsel.
Okay.
And then there's one that's Public Defender.
Oh.
Which I don't get as much. Other than like maybe Alex being the defender.
Maybe.
Or because she's going to need a good public defender after this.
Right, but like, also, it's gonna, well, the house is burning down, which is gonna mess up some evidence, but like, they literally exploded. Like, there's nothing she could have done.
Nobody, no crime, bitch.
There's nothing she could have done
Yeah.
to make that happen to them, right? Yeah, she's gonna need
But yeah,
a good
no, it's
defense,
really good set design to have the board game set up. The names of the board games set up the entire movie.
Yes. Yeah, it's just like, here is the entire movie. It's all in that first scene. Yeah, it's all laid out. Yeah. It's also just like, of course, the most like stereotypical depiction of the devil.
Yeah.
Red skin, horns, like thin mustache, little
the facial
goatee,
hair thing.
the widow's peak. It's just like, oh my gosh.
God. Okay, guys, we get it.
We get it. He's the devil. Oh
you
my
did
gosh.
It. Yeah. Do you want to talk about everybody else's names? Because
yeah, so I mean, obviously the ones that really stick out to me are Grace and Charity.
Yeah, no, because I think in general there's a lot of like, I don't know, perversion of like godly language and godly names.
True. Yeah.
Because the other thing I was thinking about for Domus, all of that Dominion stuff.
Yeah.
The name Dominic.
means
belonging to the Lord.
Oh.
Because Domus is Lord, and some times that means the Lord.
Dominus, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, Anno Domini or
Yeah.
whatever, the year of the Lord or whatever. You know, like that's another thing. But we get that throughout the family. Daniel. God is my judge.
Yeah. Alexander.
He's in the Bible.
Oh, I was just thinking about like Alexander the Great.
I have some thoughts on that too.
Okay.
But we'll get to that.
Okay.
Daniel's wife is Charity.
Yes.
Which, of course, it's one of the virtues or whatever,
Yes.
but it's ironic because she's described as a gold digger.
Yeah, she's not charitable at all.
Tony is probably Anthony.
Anthony, yeah.
Which is like the name of like 10 Christian saints.
Okay.
Becky is Rebecca, who's very famously the mother of Esau and Jacob. So she's like one of the really important matriarchs of Christianity and
those Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure about Emily and Fitch. Those aren't really anything.
No.
Especially since Emily's name is spelled with an IE at the end.
Yes, it's spelled in a very interesting
which is
way.
interesting. But their sons are Gabe, as in like
Gabe.
the Archangel Gabriel.
Yeah.
And Georgie, who in my mind is probably like St. George the Dragon Slayer, especially since he's the one who goes out to try to like shoot her.
Yeah, he does try to get her, yeah.
And then, of course, the big one is that the bride is named Grace.
Of course.
Which apparently was a virtue name created by the Puritans.
Oh.
You know, when they made all those virtue names, and Grace is one that stuck around. But yeah, Grace is interesting because the idea of grace, God's grace, is that that's how he acts. That's his like unmerited divine assistance given to humans for their regeneration or sanctification, according to Merriam-Webster.
Wow.
So the grace is how God acts on earth.
I see.
Here's
Through
grace. Here is literal grace come to fight against the devil.
Yeah.
So those are like the biblical ones, but I think you're right that Alexander, even though it's in the Bible, the immediate connection is
Alexander the Great.
Alexander
we
the
think
Great.
about Alex as in like Alexander meaning like leader of men or something
yeah,
like that.
It's very much more on the like victor dominion
Yeah,
side of
yeah,
things, which I feel like is another one of our early clues that Alex maybe isn't going to be on Grace's side in the end, that he is going to go with the dominion stuff.
Yes, yeah.
It also gives her another connection to Aunt Helene. Because Helen of Troy is what Helene brings to mind, especially since the way she spells it is actually more like how they would have spelt it in ancient Greek with like the that's a better transliteration.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, that's the beautiful woman who brought the guy that loved her to his death, which is what Aunt Helene does.
Yeah.
And of course, that man, Paris, is also known as Alexandros.
Okay.
So Alex. So it's like another connection between them two.
Oh.
Possibly Antony could also be a connection to like Mark Antony.
Sure.
Which is like just another ruler.
Yeah.
And dominator who also famously lost.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you brought up these kind of like these larger than life historical figures like Alexander the Great and Mark Antony and, you know, these people who have, you know, for lack of a better word, built empires, right? And that leads me so beautifully into Music History Corner.
Yes. I love that we get one of these. We need more of these.
We do, because So as I was doing my research, I was actually listening to Tchaikovsky.
As one does.
Because I actually love Tchaikovsky. So let me just like bring this back so we know what we're talking about. So
Yes.
Stevens, the butler, right? There's something about him that we haven't mentioned yet because I wanted to save it for this. So
Yes.
we see him at least 3 times humming, singing, conducting part of Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture.
Yeah.
So I love the 1812 overture, and it was very interesting to see Stevens love it as much as he did. And so I was like, okay, so the history of the 1812 overture is absolutely fascinating. So I wanted to look into it, and so I was doing some research, and as I was researching, I was listening to Tchaikovsky, and I just freaking love Tchaikovsky so much. So let me just kind of lay the Tchaikovsky scene for you. So he actually doesn't live very long. He's born in 1840 and he dies in 1893.
Oh.
So he doesn't really make it very long, although he is, over the course of his lifetime, an incredibly prolific composer. He's I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Russian composer of the Romantic era.
Oh.
Right? And he is absolutely the first Russian composer whose music makes a lasting impression internationally.
Oh, interesting.
He wrote really, really popular pieces. Like, obviously, everybody knows the Nutcracker. Everybody's familiar with Swan Lake.
I'm going to be honest, when you were like, Tchaikovsky, love him, I did not realize we were talking about the Nutcracker guy or the
He's
Swan
the
Lake
Nutcracker guy,
Okay.
yeah.
And because I'm quite fond too. He's very good.
His first piano concerto is amazing. He writes a lot of music inspired by Shakespeare works. He writes an overture for Romeo and Juliet. He also wrote works based on The Tempest and Hamlet.
Interesting choices.
Yes. So Tchaikovsky's a really interesting guy, and overwhelmingly, it's considered that he was probably gay.
But did he sell his soul to a devil?
No, I don't think he sold his soul to any devils. It's likely that he was gay, although I do have a problem with when we assign a sexuality to a historical figure who,
In language that we use now.
exactly.
that
It's
they
just
would
like
not-
we don't know. Especially Tchaikovsky living under like a really oppressive Russian government.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know the language he would use to describe himself. Although it's pretty well documented and pretty well considered among music historians that he was gay.
The Nutcracker is gay. Heard it here first.
The 1812 overture is an E flat major, which is an important key.
Okay.
Believe me. So
Sure, continue.
E flat major is actually a really, really significant key. It is overwhelmingly during the classic and romantic periods of music considered to be like a heroic key.
Okay.
Just please note that I'm doing air quotes as I
Yes,
say that,
yes.
right? So Beethoven's third, called the Eroica Symphony, which originally was dedicated to Napoleon Bonaparte,
Oh, okay.
is in E flat major.
That vibe.
That vibe. So we've got, it's in E flat major, 3 flats, E flat, A flat, B flat.
Okay.
So the key itself is important. And Tchaikovsky was actually commissioned to write the 1812 overture in 1880, right?
Oh, okay.
He's commissioned to write it for the opening concert of an all-Russian arts and industrial exhibition.
Ooh, an expo.
So there's also a lot of nationalism
Yeah.
happening here as well. And so he's commissioned to write it in 1880 by this guy, Peter Jurgensen. And of course, Peter is spelled Pyotr.
Oh, yeah. Piotr.
Who is likely considered to be possibly one of Tchaikovsky's male lovers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ain't cute?
I mean,
I don't know, in a kind of 1880s brooding way.
Yeah,
I see it.
he needed
Nice hair.
He needed to. I mean, you got to keep that beard nice and long to keep you warm in the
In
Russian winters.
Yeah, I
so,
mean,
yeah.
you just got to work with that one.
So Peter Jurgensen, he's a music publisher.
Oh.
and just a friend of Tchaikovsky.
yeah.
And so
Good to date a publisher. That's useful as an artist.
right. So Peter Jurgensen is like, hey, we need a piece for the opening of this all Russian arts and industrial exhibition. It can be in any key, in any form, between 15 to 25 minutes long.
Just
right?
make it epic.
Just make it epic, right? And Tchaikovsky doesn't want to do it. I actually have some really great quotes that are between like him and Peter Jurgensen's letters to each other.
Yeah?
He says, Tchaikovsky says, "There's nothing more antipathetic to me than composing for the sake of some festivities or other. What might one write on the occasion of the opening of an exhibition besides banalities and generally noisy passages?
Get it?
However, I do not have it in my heart to refuse such a request. And so I keep accepting these unsympathetic tasks regardless." So also,
he's like, bitch, I don't want to.
I know.
But I will, I guess.
And like, for me, with Tchaikovsky, it's like depression, recognize depression.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just like that, also that like common artist thing of like, I don't want to be a sellout. I don't want to do like the base commercial shit. I want to be an artiste.
Yes, but I've been commissioned. Yeah. And also,
and
you know,
money.
And he needs the money. And also, you know, Russia in this time, this is pre-Bolshevik revolution. So he's got a czar, and he's actually, you know, with Tchaikovsky's popularity, the Russian government does really kind of have a hold on him.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he traveled really extensively, and that was like in part to like gain, you know, knowledge and inspiration, but also to get the fuck out of Russia.
Yeah.
Even though he did also travel really extensively in rural Russia, which is, you know, most of Russia.
Right. Yeah.
But like, I think to me, I think it was probably multifaceted. It was like gain inspiration and learn more about the world, and also get the fuck out of Russia. So Tchaikovsky's not stoked on it, but he does it anyway. And he finishes it, and he actually composes it over the course of about 2 months, from September to November 1880. And it's scheduled to be performed the next year in Moscow, you know. And it is also meant to commemorate Russia's defeat of Napoleon in 1812, which is why it's called the 1812 Overture, even though it is not written until 1880, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This was a surprise to me. Yes. This was a twist in the story.
Yes. So Tchaikovsky writes it, and he's not happy with it. Let me read you another quote.
Yes, please.
"The muse has been kind to me recently," which is a nice start. "So that with good speed I have written 2 things, namely, 1, the Grand Festival Overture for the exhibition, that's the 1812 Overture, and 2, the Serenade for String Orchestra in 4 movements." So he's kind of working on 2 things at the same time, and the muse has been kind, right?
Yeah, that's nice.
"Both of these I am now orchestrating little by little. The overture will be very loud and noisy, but I wrote it without any warm and loving feelings. And consequently, it will probably be lacking in artistic merit."
Oh, baby.
In 1882, the composer writes to Peter Jurgensen, "I am undecided as to whether my overture is good or bad, but it is probably, without any false modesty, the latter."
Oh, honey.
So Tchaikovsky's just not into this. Like, it's just not his. It's not his gig, right? Like
it's like it's doing commissioned art.
Like,
that
artists
you don't care about
to pay the bills,
because it's the thing that makes the money. It's not the thing you do for the passion.
Exactly. So, but it's unfortunate that Tchaikovsky feels this way, because I feel the opposite.
Well, it's like really popular.
It's
right?
very popular.
I mean,
yes.
I didn't know it by name, but I recognized it as like, oh, that's a piece that I've heard before.
I've heard it in movies.
It comes up a lot in things.
Absolutely.
I don't know what things, couldn't name them, but I've heard it for sure. And
well,
hey,
let
is
me
that
tell
the
you.
Nutcracker guy? That's not
that
what
is the Nutcracker guy. It's a really, in my opinion, a really beautiful piece. And I'm wondering if maybe Tchaikovsky was like, I don't think it's good because he is very blatantly using other pieces. So, for instance, at the very beginning of the piece, it begins with like this really simple plaintive Russian melody, which is basically like an Eastern Orthodox hymn. Basically, that translates to "O Lord, save thy people." So this represents the Russian people like praying that, like, because Napoleon's kicking ass up to this point, right? So like, oh my gosh, Napoleon's coming, like, please God, save, keep us safe, right?
They could have made a deal with the devil, but they didn't.
They
went to God.
So this represents, the Russian people praying for that swift conclusion to the invasion. And then we start to hear, now this is really a really interesting piece of history. We start to hear what is now the French national anthem, La Marseillaise, thank you, representing the French army invading. However, now La Marseillaise was written before Napoleon's time, but Napoleon actually banned it. So it would not have been playing or not have been a song,
Yeah. It's like one of those things that people do when they make like, there's a word for it. The Tiffany problem. Where people who are making like historical novels, even though Tiffany would have been a name in like the Elizabethan times.
Sure.
They can't use it because it sounds so modern.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like this is another like time thing where like, okay, this isn't technically accurate to the time, but it's what the people of this time will recognize as French.
Yes.
So we're going to use it because it's French.
And that is the thing, is that like probably the more educated, aristocracy of Russia at this time is going to hear that song and know what it means and what it represents, right? So even though Napoleon actually like nixes that,
it's not really.
And then it becomes the French national anthem after and still to this day, right? So those are just kind of, that Russian folk song and hymn with La Marseillaise like together, kind of representing the battle, right?
Oh, okay.
And then at this point we hear 5 cannon shots heard. This was one of the reasons why I think this piece is so popular, is because one of the instruments is a literal cannon.
Yeah. Who doesn't love?
Representing the Battle of Borodino.
Of course.
Which I believe is because through Napoleon's campaign in Russia in 1812, they actually fight about 5 battles, and he actually only loses one of them.
Oh. But it's the one that matters.
It's that one, yeah. So that's when we hear La Marseillaise the most prominent. And then we hear like a really long descending run, which is representing like the French retreating out of Moscow, right? Especially because Napoleon makes the age-old mistake of invading Russia in the winter.
You don't do
you
that.
You never do that.
Napoleon.
By Napoleon's time,
Even
people should know that. You
Yeah.
should know that you do not invade Russia in the winter. So they're retreating out of Moscow, right? And then we kind of start to get into the grand finale. And this is where we hear the melody. We get 11 more cannon shots, and we get the melody of God Save the King, which is the British national anthem.
What's that about?
So, great question. So it is the melody of God Save the King, but it is also the melody of God Save the Tsar. So I think God Save the King came first, and then Russia's like, cool, we're taking the tune and we're rewriting it for our Tsar.
Yeah.
And then at the very end with the cannon fire is the melody from the 1812 overture, the da 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 da. Yeah, that's the 1812
That's the part
overture.
that I really
we
recognize.
hear that. Honestly, it's a very popular piece to play on 4th of July with fireworks. We hear it in the final scene of that movie V for Vendetta. Like it's around. Right?
Yeah. It's definitely in the popular culture,
And it's very much like it's meant as like a celebration of like this opening, exhibition. So it's very victorious.
And celebratory.
It's an E flat major.
Yeah.
And
it's just it's very fun. It's very jumpy.
it is fun. It's a fun tune. He does a really good job. It's a bummer that he didn't like it very much.
Well, fun is not the most artistically
fulfilling.
fulfilling. I don't know why though. Fun's great.
Fun's
why
fun.
can fun not be artistically valuable?
Yeah, I like having
Why
fun.
cannot horror movies be artistically valued? These are questions we have.
Yes. So this brings me back to, why does Stevens love the 1812 overture?
Yes.
So
Tell me all about it.
I have a thought. So I've already mentioned this. Like, Stevens is very strangely loyal to the La Domas family, right? And he ends up dying for the La Domas family.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, Stevens, what's your deal? Why do you love the 1812 overture so much? So I think Stevens is terribly misguided. I think Stevens thinks that he represents Russia, or at least a Russian, right?
Yeah.
He's protected by the strong absolute ruler. He's in this hospitable climate, right?
Yeah.
But he's not Russia. And I was like, is he Napoleon? No, he's not even Napoleon, because he doesn't have that much power, right?
Right.
He's just kind of like a foot soldier
Yeah.
in Napoleon's war, either as a way to survive, or he is really a true believer in this imperialistic idea that Napoleon is putting forward. And then it all comes crashing down.
Yeah.
Right? Eventually, Napoleon is defeated in Russia, and he's eventually defeated permanently and is exiled and, and dies in exile, right?
And also with Napoleon, even before he's defeated, it almost doesn't matter when you're a soldier, because you're still putting your life on the line every time. Like, you can be defeated on an individual level. You are going to be defeated on an individual level so much sooner than Napoleon is.
Right.
Because you're the one in the front, you know, if you're...
While the empire might still continue to limp on.
Just like this family, the Lenormases, think about the goats and Grace and their maids and everybody, he's expendable. He's replaceable. Soldiers are expendable and replaceable.
And maybe Stevens is super cool being a foot soldier for the Ladomases.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's because that's all he knows, sort of thing. But it was just absolutely fascinating to me that he's like so into the 1812 overture. And I was like, do you understand what this music represents?
Because he's even playing, he's getting so celebratory because he thinks he caught Grace and he thinks they won.
Yes, and he's like singing and conducting.
And and that's how Grace gets him.
That's true, yeah. Really interesting stuff. So you said you had some fan theories?
I did look at some things.
I'm going to be honest, I did not look at fan theories, so
some of them are things I looked
hear.
at. Okay, so this one is the small one. Going back to how Grace, like the meaning of her name and how she's like maybe on a mission from God or being protected by God, has some sort of connection to God. Samara Weaving, the actress, has a couple tattoos. Oh. There's a chili pepper right there on one of her hands. Okay. And then we also actually see a little moon that she has on one of her fingers. She has like a little crescent moon.
I don't remember either of those, but I believe you. Okay.
Yeah, no, she has this kind of big, dark, just like all black chili pepper right on one of her hands.
Interesting.
But there was this, so this random theory website called Conspiracy Meow.
Conspiracy Meow?
Yeah, like a cat. Meow.
Okay.
That seems to just sort of be kind of like a joke fan theory and then also like some conspiracy theory stuff, but like in sort of a fun, silly way.
Okay.
Pointed out that it looks like a cornicello, which is this Italian symbol, which is like a curved horn.
Okay.
And it can be like gold or silver, but it's often made with red coral. And because of that, and because of its kind of curved shape, people often say that it's like a chili pepper.
Oh.
And so actually in certain parts of Italy, you will see either these cornicello talismans or you'll see actual chili peppers hung up because they are meant to ward off evil, like evil eye stuff. Yeah. And then also like bring fortune and also like maybe increase fertility, going back to like more pagan stuff.
That's always a thing. Yeah.
And like, because like red itself is like a lucky color and it symbolizes victory over enemies, which includes the devil. Like specifically, the cornicello is supposed to be victory over the devil,
over evil.
Yeah. Which was, I just thought that was like, obviously that was not something that they didn't intend, because that's just a tattoo that she has that they chose not to cover up because it does make sense for Grace's character that she'd have tattoos. Yeah. But it's sort of interesting to think about. Maybe that's part of why she went, or like part of protecting her. Yeah. Maybe why she doesn't get seen a lot, why she's good at hiding a lot. Is because she actually has a bit of protection.
Now tell me, do you remember which hand that tattoo is on? And is that the one she gets shot through or the other one?
I think it's the other one. Okay. Because I think she gets shot through the one that has the little moon on her finger.
Okay.
But I'm not positive. Okay. I don't know. So yeah, I don't think that's like an actual thing, but I just thought it was a cute idea.
Very interesting.
I thought it was a cute idea of like, why does Grace win? Well, because these guys are all incompetent. Yeah. But also maybe
she's got a little extra on her side.
Yeah, maybe she's got a little extra on her side. Yeah. So that's just a little side one I thought. The other one that I thought was interesting is that there's this moment where Aunt Helene refers to Alex as the chosen one.
Yeah.
And like, what is that about? Like, is that just Aunt Helene being crazy?
Is like so intense.
Like, is she making it up? Is there in their family some sort of chosen one prophecy that we just aren't hearing about?
And what are they chosen to do?
Is it because he like saw LaBelle when he was a child?
Right.
And then I was like, maybe she's wrong and Grace is the chosen one? Ooh. Because she's the one who actually wins the game.
She does.
And earns LaBelle's respect.
That's true.
And like this whole thing starts with Victor winning a game against the devil.
He like appears for a moment and gives her like a cordial head nod. You
know?
And
kind of tips his glass like he's coasting her, which goes back to when she does a toast to Mr. LaBelle at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. And like everyone's like awkwardly drinking. Alex doesn't even drink because it's like so awkward. Oh boy. Because she's the only one who doesn't know she's about to die.
That's another thing though. I don't want to interrupt you, but like that is another thing. Like they're, especially in that scene after the wedding and like they're all together as a family, like the vibe is so weird.
It's so bad.
And Grace is like not picking up on it.
I think Grace is just like, this is family.
Right. She doesn't know what it means to have a family. So like maybe they're super awkward and weird all the time. And like this.
And she has stories from Alex about how like my family's like kind of crazy and awful.
And so she's like, this is what the Ladomases are like, and I want to be a part of your family.
At least Becky is super nice to her and super welcoming.
But even she gets weird like when Grace toasts to Mr. LaBelle.
Yeah.
She's just like, oh boy, you know, and like takes a drink really quickly. Yeah. And like is visibly very uncomfortable. And it's just like, Grace, why aren't you picking up on the fact that everyone looks so really uncomfortable right now? Anyway.
But so then there were some theories about basically about the ending. And it's like, is that nod? And because she won a game, technically against the devil, and that's how this all started. Was that not her ending everything? But was that actually her beginning a new deal with the devil?
Right. Yeah. I would like to think that that's like the end. It's just like, okay, this is the end. Like, are those the rest of the La Domases,
Yeah.
Because they do mention other family members they have, and, it's like, oh, I thought they died in a house fire. It's like, that's what they want you to think, but it was Mr. LaBelle,
Right, which is setting us up for the ending.
Of course, yeah.
Because the papers will say it was all a house fire.
Of course, yeah. Because it does burn down, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would love if that was more of a representation of, like, our business here is finished.
Yeah.
Rather than our business here is beginning.
Yeah, I would like that too. But it is
Grace,
interesting, especially when you combine it with the other theory that if the entire family does die, is she inheriting the Les Domas fortune?
Right.
Which was earned through this deal with the devil. Does she have, is it like the 30 piece of silver? Is it like cursed money now that comes with this deal with the devil?
Yeah, I don't know. I remember I was kind of looking into that about like but it was more from the perspective of the character of Alex, is like, which family does he belong to, right? Because he's kind of separating himself from the La Domases, and like it's their family and their family fortune and their family agreement with the devil, right? And he doesn't explode until last.
She rejects him.
She takes off her wedding
family.
ring. Yeah. And so, like, does she ever actually become a member of the La Domas family? Not really.
No.
Right? So...
But it's possible, then, that she's starting a new family with a new deal.
Maybe.
Or she's ending it all.
I
don't know. It's kind of ambiguous. It's interesting.
There has been a talk of a second one.
Oh, interesting.
There's been talk of a second one for quite a while. I mean, this movie came out in 2019, so it's actually not that old.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, there's been talk of a second one, and like, what would that second one look like? Like, would it pick up from where Grace is now, or would we like look at a
prequel?
Get a prequel, or are we gonna like get something simultaneous, like what's happening with another family that's
are there other families that have made deals with devils in different ways? I mean, yeah, it's a rich world.
Yeah,
but it also brings me to sort of what I was thinking about in terms of like her inheriting the money.
Right.
I'm not sure. This is where I get into listeners at home. Erica and I have this joke when we watch the Purge franchise, where I particularly, but Erica has come along with me, get very obsessed with the intricacies of how the law works in the Purge
and the justice system under a world in which the Purge is a thing. Yeah,
which we established by randomly yelling Purge law.
So and also like we will talk about the
We're
Purge
coming
franchise.
To the Purge. It's coming.
I think we need to like get ready. I think there's like
there's a lot of emotional.
We need to get in the right headspace, but like. Katie and I love the Purge franchise.
Yeah. Okay,
Ready or Not Law.
Ready or Not Law. Yeah. See, it doesn't have the same ring as Purge law.
It really doesn't.
But I want to talk about the law because, like, I'm not sure that actually. Okay, so if the entire Les Domas clan is, I actually looked into this.
Okay.
So she's legally married into this family.
Did they sign the marriage certificate? We never see that happen.
I mean, even if so they talk about how she won't officially be a member of the family until after the deal. But I think in the state of whatever state they're in, they've probably. Normally, big fancy weddings like that, they have that all taken care of often before the ceremony, too.
Before the ceremony or like
directly after.
Yeah.
Right before the reception.
I remember when my cousin got married, like they had their own little special room where like they signed the marriage certificate with like the witnesses and stuff like that. Yeah.
So probably they have.
Yeah.
But even so, I have to imagine that all of these rich bitches have like really intense wills.
Sure.
Really detailed wills.
And like prenups and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, okay, so maybe she would inherit some of Alex's wealth.
Right.
There's probably a lot of the estate going so many other places.
Right.
Like, probably she would only get like half of Alex's wealth based on common law.
Sure.
But it depends on what state she's in. I looked into it.
Do we ever find out what state they're in?
I don't think so.
I don't think so
And
either.
even then, she would probably have to deal with a bunch of bullshit legal stuff to like actually get that. And like, how many resources does she have to actually go through all that legal work? And okay,
like her legal resources, but also like her emotional resources.
Yeah, and like how much she wants that money.
Exactly.
And it's possible that Alex wrote a will that was like all my assets are going to my wife.
Right.
And how that works with anything he would have inherited from his family, but he wouldn't have inherited yet because they don't know where he died in terms of that. Right. So even still, I feel like she would only at most be eligible for his wealth, which probably isn't small. No, but it's not the entire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's if she gets it, considering that his death was literally on their wedding day, and that's suspicious as hell.
That is suspicious as fuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and his entire family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just also not to mention how much of their wealth is actually swept up in the business. Like, it's a gaming empire.
Right, yeah.
And, like, is the family actually in charge of this business, or are they more figureheads? Are they on the board? Who's the CEO?
Who's the CEO? Yeah.
What's his money?
It's like, and how much, what are their liquid assets, right? Like, how much cash do they have versus, like, stocks or real estate?
I mean, I imagine that home has already been left in the will to something very specific, some sort of preservation, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Like, I mean, these are rich people. I don't think, there are a lot of theories about how, like, she'll end up with the money, and that's, like, sort of either possibly supporting the idea that she's starting a new deal.
Yeah.
But in terms of Parch Law, Ready or Not Law, I don't think actually she would end up.
No, I don't think
at most she would get
much.
Alex's money, and that's if, another thing people talk about, is she going to go to jail for these murders?
Right.
What do you think?
But see, here's the thing. They exploded.
Most of them.
Literally... Okay, well, yeah, so this is the thing, is that Becky and Daniel are dead before the explosions
legit
occur.
did kill Becky.
Yes, so do they also explode?
I don't... And then the maids and Stevens, the butler...
This is true.
They died.
Yeah.
I can't see why they would explode.
No.
And, like, she can say all she wants that, like, they were all trying to kill her. And, like, she has some, like, defensive wounds or whatever.
Sure.
That would... But I can imagine that at least somebody extremely rich in the business would be very invested in not having the Le Domas family end with them all being murderous killers and having a pit full of dead bodies and stuff. So, like, if she tried to take that to court or anything like that, it'd be so easy to tarnish her name to protect the Le Domases.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I could see, and, like, if she doesn't get any money, what kind of lawyer is she going to get? Is she going to end up with a public defender? Is that why that's one of the games?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I just prefer to believe that the climax of this film is, like, the worst of it for Grace.
I hope so.
And, like, maybe she's going to find herself, like, dealing with some legal headaches for a few years, but, like, I really don't think that she would make her own deal with the devil.
No.
Her name's Grace, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
That she would
yeah, I don't really buy that either.
Initiate a new deal.
I think his nod is him being like, okay, you won this.
You win this round, young lady. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Or like Mr. LaBelle's like, I was getting bored with this family anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
these guys.
because it does seem
I've been
like
with this family since the Civil War.
Yeah,
I'm
like
done.
it does kind of seem like it's been a multi-generational deal. Yeah, totally.
So I don't know. It is interesting though to think about, especially in terms of a sequel. Like what happens after this film.
Right, yeah.
For Grace specifically. And yeah, there are a lot of theories about it. Even among like the writers and the cast themselves, they also jumped, sort of bandied around the idea like, well, did she get arrested? Did she inherit all the money? We don't know.
Yeah, because it just ends with her saying in-laws,
But my very educated lawyer, because I'm a super educated lawyer person who knows everything about the law, is that she's not getting much money.
She's probably not going to get that much. Yeah. I would imagine that she might get a little something.
Yeah, but it will really depend on how bad she looks in the actual murders and how suspicious that is.
So, because she did...
And even if they did file their marriage certificate, even if they did sign it, did they file their marriage certificate?
Right.
Is it through? Like,
the timeline is...
It's bad.
It's tight. Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah. I just don't really know. I guess I just didn't really want to think about it. I want to think about
her being kind of...
Grace's nightmare being over.
I want to think about her being kind of back where she started.
Yeah.
Which isn't... I mean, she still loses, like you said before, about she loses either way because she never gets the family that she wants.
Yeah.
But I like to think it's not worse than when she started.
I hope that she also learns a valuable lesson that, like, family is not the solution to your problems.
Yeah.
Right?
That it isn't like the family that she wants, like a connection and love. You
know?
And
not it doesn't need to be
not like the idea of being possessed by a family.
Through marriage or law.
Yeah.
Can I just, since we're wrapping it up here, I just want to talk about a little bit more about that very last scene.
Okay, yeah.
So I wrote down the order they die in.
Oh. Which
is, I think, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, they realize it's sunrise, right? They realize, oh shit. And then they kind of have that moment of, well, nothing's happening. Maybe this is all bullshit, right?
And then Helene's
like, I'm going to kill her anyway.
Because she knows too much.
Right, exactly. So Aunt Helene, I think, needs to go first because she's the one putting Grace in the danger immediately, right? Yeah. So she goes first.
Who's honestly a sore loser. I imagine the devil is not a fan of sore losers.
Maybe not, yeah. So Aunt Helene goes first, and then I think it's Charity and Fitch, or one or the other. And I think it's just because, like, they're done. They have nothing else to contribute to other than like scream and fear. Right?
Charity's is interesting because she has that line earlier about how she'd rather die.
And then when she's faced with death, she's like, I take it back.
I'll give all of it back.
Yeah. And it's just like, all right, Charity.
So, I mean, she loses her faith in the devil. So there you go. Killer. So Fitch never had faith in the devil. He never believed it was real.
He had no idea what was going on because he's an idiot. And then Becky and Daniel are already dead at this point, right? The maids and Stevens are all dead, right? And then we get Emily and her kids, right?
She tries to save.
She tries to save, right? And then we hear and see the like
three explosions
kind of off camera though.
Yeah.
But we see like the blood spray just to like there, and we hear 3 of them. So it's like, okay, we don't know
the
what
kids
order,
are out. Yeah.
But like the kids got to, right? And then we're left with Tony and Alex and Grace, right? And Tony says like the most entitled bullshit ever, right? He's like, I did everything right.
Yes.
I played by the rules.
Yeah, and you lost by the rules.
Yeah. And I was like, first of all, again, born on third base, buddy. Like, you know, fuck you. You did everything right, you know.
This is wealth that goes back to the Civil War.
The Civil War. You just were born into a family. Like, that's what you did, basically.
And with all of that, you still lost the fucking game.
And he's so mad, and he's got, like, such white man rage.
Yes.
And then he explodes. I was like, good. I was done listening to him talk, right?
Yeah.
And then Alex sticks around for a while, right? Enough to kind of, like, plead his case and, like, beg Grace to be like, you know, like, look, I why haven't I exploded yet? It's because you changed me. It's because of you know?
Me.
And then what does she say? Like, I want a divorce. Or
she says, I want a divorce.
And again, just, like, the beautiful taking off of the ring, throwing it at him, and just, like, the pop.
And what we didn't talk about in terms of music is the creepy hide-and-seek game.
Oh, my God, the creepy hide-and-seek song!
Yeah, which comes back in the end in a really cool way when it's the house is starting to burn down, where it gets all warped and weird.
Yes.
And the timing of it, it's, like, counting down to when he dies this time. Yeah. So, like, now he's in the lower position in their relationship. He's the one who, like, doesn't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
and, like,
he's the one without power now. Yeah.
He's counting down to something horrible.
Yeah. And I think also, oh my gosh, that, like, it's just so creepy. Like, why does it exist, right? That song. And I think, obviously, they do it because I think it's just another example of, like, tradition versus modernity. Like, it's obviously, like, an older...
Yeah, they have their old...
Not well-aged song.
Yeah.
Comes off as, like, really, really creepy.
And they're playing it on their old, like...
Yeah.
I was going to say gramophone.
Vitrola?
Yeah, something.
I don't know. Some old vinyl player thing. Yeah. And then it comes back at the end, right, and counts down to Alex's death. And like and yeah, it's already creepy. And then as the house is burning down, the vinyl starts to warp and starts to like make weird sounds and adds to its creepiness.
And it can add to the idea of like what family is Alex a part of, because the song Counting Down is sort of Grace needing to play this game to become part of the family. And now this is sort of Alex's moment to sort of figure out, is Grace going to allow him into her family,
right,
or leave him as a part of the Le Domases, in which case, bye.
Bye. Yeah. Should we wrap this up with a game?
We always should.
Let's go. Okay. So you decided for us, which was a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's just play a super quick round of Fuck, Marry, Kill.
Yeah.
Deals with the Devil edition.
Yeah.
So here's our options. We've got Adam Brody, not as Daniel, but as the character Nikolai Wolf from Jennifer's Body.
I still can't believe that's his actual name.
I mean, it's not.
I mean, it's his stage name, obviously. But
we have Anya Taylor-Joy as Thomason from The Vavitch.
Yes.
And we also have Mark O'Brien, who's the actor who plays the character Alex in Ready or Not.
So he's our Ready or Not character.
He's the Ready or Not character. Do you want to start?
Sure. I think the really easy answer is to marry Thomason. She's the only person I could see spending any amount of extended time with.
For sure.
She's a little young.
She's a little young.
Hopefully she'll grow up a little bit before we get married.
Yeah.
We'll be a little more on even footing.
Yeah.
Or does she age at all? I don't know how the witch shit works.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, maybe she's still out there today. Being a badass bitch.
Maybe she does age, but it is like a Portrait of Dorian Gray thing where like she is older but doesn't look it, or like she's got her old crone guys.
She has her old crone guys, just like the other witch, who then also has her sexy younger guys.
Of course,
Yeah. Anyway, marrying that woman.
For sure.
In terms of okay. Alex is a piece of shit, as we've established. Yeah. But he's also kind of funny.
He is funny.
And it seems like him and Grace had a good time.
They do, like in that opening scene, like they establish that these two are like really sweet and do have like a really nice connection, and they can like be humorous with each other. Yeah.
And I feel like you don't really get into problems with Alex until you're trying to have any sort of long-term thing with him, because that's when he starts to get possessive and weird.
Right.
And maybe tries to marry you and then kill you. So, like, if we keep it on more of a fuck buddies basis, I feel like Alex could be okay. Plus, he's rich, so maybe I'll get cool gifts out of it.
Right. Yeah.
You never know. Which means, yes, God damn it, I will. Even though he's Adam Brody and I love his face, I will kill Nikolai Wolf.
Kill Nikolai Wolf. I agree with you on the Thomason. Yeah. Definitely the only of these three that I could see spending any significant amount of time with.
She's the only one who's,
and this would
She's the only one who's like a good person.
But this would be Thomason post Vivitch, right?
Yeah, post deal with Devil.
Yeah, okay,
We don't know how she's changed by that, but... Well, I like to think she'll come into herself.
She'll stop quoting the Bible, because, like, that's a huge turnoff for me.
Yeah, I don't think that'd bother me much.
I think I would probably kill Alex.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, ugh.
Because he's a piece of shit, as we have established.
He really is. So I would probably kill him.
And, like, kill the rich.
Right, yes. Which then would leave Adam Brody's character, Nikolai Wolf, as the fuck of this.
And plus, if you fuck him, you're no longer a virgin, so you're safe from him.
Oh my gosh, that's a really, really good point. Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Also, he's a musician. His character's a musician, so it's like we might have something in common, you know? Just like enough of a connection to like hook up and then never see him again, and then he'll know I'm not a virgin, so he won't sacrifice me to the devil. Yeah.
Well, should we do Fuck, Marry, Kill Adam Brody edition? So, Nikolai Wolf, Daniel from this one, and I was going to say the guy from the OC, but we don't know anything about him.
And I don't remember his character in Promising Young Woman either.
Yeah. Or his small role in the Gilmore Girls.
This has been Deep Thought Shallow Plots. We're going to be talking about cat people next time. Really excited to watch it for the first time.
Thanks, as usual, to our sound guy, Matt.
Until next time, play the shit out of some checkers.